Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Hold no punches.
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig? Today is Wednesday, September 25th, 2024. Coming up on Roland Martin Unfiltered, streaming live on the Black Star Network. A Haitian rights group wants Donald Trump and his sidekick, J.D. Vance, to answer to their false claims about Haitian immigrants in Springfield, Ohio. We'll talk to the co-founder and executive director of the Haitian Bridge Alliance, the group that filed a citizen criminal charges against the Republican duo. Speaking of Haitians and Republicans, Louisiana Congressman Clay Higgins posted one of those racist tweets ever, and less than an hour ago, he was confronted by Black House members on the floor. Congressman Stephen Horsford is trying to get a censure resolution against him. We'll tell you exactly what has happened with this breaking news story. All this has transpired in the last 30 to 45 minutes. House Republicans host a hearing about how the government is weaponized against Trump. Well, the Democrats, especially Congresswomen Stacy Plaskett and Jasmine Crocket, they lit that ass up. And we're going to show you exactly what they had to say. The list of Republicans supporting Vice President Kamala Harris is expanding. We'll talk with former Republican Illinois Congressman Joe Walsh, who's been traveling the country on her behalf. The Federal Reserve has cut interest rates, but is it enough for your bank account to see some relief? We'll talk to economist Morgan Harper. We'll also talk to her about Vice President Kamala Harris' economic speech. It took place today. Also, folks, we will pay tribute to one of the biggest voices in the labor movement, William Bill Lucy, has passed away. We'll celebrate his life, the man who helped shape labor unions and played a major role in dismantling South African apartheid. And we'll also show you the interview that I did with him in Memphis around the 50th anniversary of the assassination of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. because he was involved with the sanitation workers there in Memphis. Folks, it's time to bring the funk on Roland Martin Unfiltered. On the Black Star Network, let's go.
He's got it. Whatever the miss, he's on it. Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the find. And when it breaks, he's right on time and it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports to news to politics. With entertainment just for kicks, he's rolling. It's on go, roll, y'all. It's Roland Martin, Rolling with Roland now. He's rolling.
Folks, a racist tweet from Louisiana Congressman Clay Higgins has caused a lot of drama on the floor in the United States House. This is the tweet that was sent out right here. So if you see the tweet, man, talk about how pathetic this particular tweet is. He says, LOL, these Haitians are wild, eating pets, voodoo, nastiest country in the Western Hemisphere, cults, slapstick gangsters. But damned if they don't feel all sophisticated now, filing charges against our president and VP. All these thugs better get their mind right and their ass out of our country before January 20th. Folks, that literally was posted not to his personal account. That was posted to his congressional account. Well, in the last hour, that absolutely ticked off members of Congress, black members of Congress. At one point, a number of them were surrounding Clay Higgins, including Congressman Byron Donalds. Not sure what his role was, Republican out of Florida. But Congressman Stephen Horsford demanded he take the tweet down, and he actually did. Horsford also went to the floor to try to get a censure motion against Higgins. Again, all this has been transpiring in the last hour. Of course, it has been Donald Trump and J.D. Vance ramping up their attacks on Haitians in Springfield, Illinois, especially after Trump's speech just the other night. And so I'm going to try to show you what took place on the floor. But this has been going on, again, the whole back and forth. This is the tweet right here that started it all. Right here, this particular tweet right here, this from Louisiana Congressman Clay Higgins. I want to bring in, I'm going to go to my panel right now. I want to bring them in also. Before I do that, I'm going to show you what Donald Trump had to say at his rally in Indiana, Pennsylvania about Haitians in Springfield.
Kamala has illegally flown in more than 500,000 migrants right when she was saying, no, we don't want to do that. And she's got, these guys actually want these people in our country. It's not even believable. Working with left-wing nonprofits to inundate Pennsylvania communities, changing the character of small towns and villages all over our country and changing them forever. They will never be the same. They will never be. Do you think Springfield will ever be the same? I don't think. The fact is, and I'll say it now, you have to get them the hell out. You have to get them out. I'm sorry. To get them out. Can't have it. Can't have it. They've destroyed it. It's terrible. It's terrible to say, and it's a tough thing to do. You know, you're going to take in some murderers and things, and you'll put them on the planes and the buses, and you're going to start doing it. Dwight Eisenhower holds the record. Believe it or not, he was a moderate kind of a guy, General Eisenhower, president, and he has the record. He couldn't stand people pouring into our country, and he took a lot and took them out. He's very strong on that. And we have to be strong. We have no choice because this is not sustainable by any country. There's no country that can do this. I mean, what were they thinking when they did it?
Folks, that was last night. We have continued to see how Republicans have been targeting Haitian immigrants there in Springfield, Ohio. Now, because of that, the leader of a nonprofit representing the Haitian community invoked a private citizen's right to file charges against these MAGA Republicans. The Haitian Bridge Alliance made the move after the local prosecutors' inaction. Jerlene Joseph, co-founder and executive director of the Haitian Bridge Alliance, joins us right now to explain why they took action. Glad to have you here. First off, before we get to your lawsuit, just your thoughts on this drama on the House floor where this Republican from Louisiana said those vile things about Haitian immigrants on his official congressional Twitter account.
Roland, thank you so much for having me. It is a disgrace. That's basically what it is. For a congressional member to be able to be allowed to post this type of vile, derogatory language against a group of people is unacceptable. So what we are seeing is just unacceptable on the floor of Congress, the floor of the People's House.
We're going to short it in a moment with Congressman Stephen Horsford had to say there on the floor. But again, what you see are Republicans who are picking up on this, and they are attacking Haitian immigrants all across this country, making up things and just saying vile, shameful, despicable, demeaning things about them.
You know, this is not the first time we've had to deal with this type of language, this type of inhumane language. The way that they are able to weaponize whatever language they can and they want. They're able to create this type of narrative to attack the community that they thought did not have representation. But we had to show them that the Haitian American community, the Black community in the United States, will not stand for this type of narrative, will not stand for this type of harassment, will not stand for this type of attack. Because at the end of the day, we must hold them accountable. The words hold power, and we have to make sure that we stop them in their track.
Have you been talking to the Haitian immigrants there in Springfield? What are they saying? Are they fearful? Because before we heard reports where parents were keeping their kids home from school, afraid of them getting attacked.
Yes, the reality is the Haitian community in Springfield and around the country is terrified. We have our cohort we have been working with in Springfield for the past year to help them to get training, to help them revitalize the same economy that Mr. Trump just stood there and said they are creating issues. The Haitian immigrants who are currently in Springfield are the reason why Springfield has been able to bring back their economy, to be able to bring back the culture, because those people have come to make sure that they prosper. That's what they have been doing in Springfield. So we continue to see how they are using our community, how they are creating those narratives for their own gains, literally using people's lives. Roland, let me tell you a couple of stories. We have one of our clients in Springfield who told us that he went to work and one of his colleagues came to him and asked him, does he love to eat cat? We have another one who has a beloved cat and that really hurt him because his best companion is his beloved cat. But when you come and you traumatize the community, it cannot be without penalty. It cannot be without accountability. We, myself, with the Haitian Alliance, we've been under immense threat. I've been calling the N-word multiple times. We've been told to go to our country. And we have been told, because of the Haitian Alliance, we are the reason why Haitians and other Black immigrants and Black people continues to bring AIDS into the United States, including in Boston. We have been forced to take measures to make sure that our staff is safe, and we are working into the communities to make sure that communities in Springfield, in Boston, in Pennsylvania, in New York are safe and protected. This is too dangerous.
All right, then. We will continue to cover this story. And actually, just hold tight 1 second. Let's do this here. So this is what took place on the House floor. Again, there were a series of tweets that I saw literally as I was before the show. And members of Congress, Black members of Congress, challenged Congressman Clay Higgins on the floor of the U.S. House, among them Congressman Stephen Horsford. They were challenging him about this racist tweet that he actually posted. And then there were several Black lawmakers around him, including Republican Congressman Byron Donalds. Not sure where he stood on this whole deal, but this is what took place later on the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask unanimous consent to speak before the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Earlier today,
the gentleman has withdrawn the objection. The gentleman will continue.
Earlier today, a gentleman from Louisiana posted on his official X account, LOL, these Haitians are wild, eating pets, voodoo, nastiest country in the Western Hemisphere, cults, slapstick gangsters, but damned if they don't feel all sophisticated now, filing charges against our president and VP. All these thugs better get their mind right and their ass out of our country before January 20th. Mr. Speaker, under Rule 23, the Code of Official Conduct for the 118th Congress states that a member shall behave at all times in a manner that reflect credibly on the House. These words on an official post do not reflect credibly on the House. In fact, they are inciting hate. They are inciting fear. And because of that, it is time for this body to stand with one voice and to ensure that there's accountability. So I move to refer this matter to the Committee on Ethics and that we bring this member up for censure.
Yes. Does the gentleman yield back?
I made a motion.
There is no matter pending before the House.
I made a motion based on Rule 23, point of parliamentary inquiry.
The gentleman is not stating a proper motion at this time.
The gentleman is not stating a proper motion at this time.
The motion, Mr. Speaker, may I inquire under Rule 23 whether this is a violation of the official code of conduct before the House.
Yes.
The gentleman has not made an inquiry relevant to the current proceedings. The motion is not in order.
My inquiry, Mr. Speaker, thank you. May I ask of the parliamentarian whether the Rule 23 code of conduct applies against the gentleman from Louisiana?
Yes.
The chair will not provide an advisory opinion on this matter.
Mr. Speaker, point of inquiry.
The gentleman will state the inquiry.
Is it appropriate for a member to use their official equipment in violation of Rule 23?
Does the gentleman have a parliamentary inquiry?
Yes.
The gentleman will state the inquiry.
My parliamentary inquiry is a member allowed to use their official equipment of the House of Representatives and platform in violation of Rule 23?
Sir, this is not an issue that the chair is prepared to rule on at this time. This is a matter for the House to determine.
And that is why I made the motion to refer this matter to the Committee on Ethics so that they can fully deliberate and determine whether the gentleman from Louisiana violated Rule 23 of the Code of Conduct of the House of Representatives.
Sir, that is not a proper motion that's in order at this time.
Point of order.
The gentleman will state the point of order.
What is the proper motion for me to refer this matter to the Committee on Ethics?
Sure he can. Yes, he can.
Sir, the chair will not issue an advisory opinion, but I advise you to take this issue up with the parliamentarian.
I'm not asking, Mr. Speaker, for you to make a determination of an advisory opinion. I'm asking for the matter to be referred to the Committee on Ethics based on the violation of Rule 23 Code of Conduct before the House of Representatives.
Sir, the ruling of the chair is that that motion is not in order at this time.
At what time would it be in order after someone... There's children who are feeling threatened in this moment based on the actions of the member from Louisiana.
The chair advises the member to pursue this matter through the proper channels under Rule 9 of the House rules. For what purpose does the gentlewoman seek recognition?
I make a motion to overrule the ruling of the chair.
Objection.
The chair has not issued a ruling.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. You have made a ruling.
Gentlewoman will state their point of order.
You have made a ruling that the gentleman's motion is not in order. And I object and disagree with that ruling, so I would like to make a motion to overrule the decision of the chair.
The chair advises the gentlewoman that there was no valid motion made and therefore no ruling made that can be objected to. The chair advises members of the availability of Rule 9 under the House rules.
I make a motion that this gentleman's words be stricken from the official record that he used by using official property and platform of the U.S. House of Representatives.
Sir, that is not a valid motion under the House rules.
Point of inquiry.
Gentleman will state his point of inquiry.
So the gentleman from Louisiana, had he stood on the floor of the House of Representatives and said these words on the House floor, the body would have been able to remove his words from the record. Is that not correct, Mr. Speaker?
Sir, the chair cannot respond to a hypothetical inquiry.
We're going to stop.
Does the gentleman yield back?
Mr. Speaker, it is unfortunate that on the last day of this body's work on behalf of the people, after we came together just last week in a bipartisan way to protect and to provide dignitary protection for our national party candidates, that we have a member who is choosing to use an official platform, and therefore it is my intention to bring to this body a motion of censure, and therefore I yield back.
No, I move.
I move to censor Representative Clay Higgins for violating Rule 9 by bringing discredit and disgrace to the House of Representatives. And I'm submitting this motion.
A gentleman has not made a proper motion. The gentleman,
I move to censor.
Enter it as a resolution.
I am entering this as a resolution.
Again, the chair reminds members of the availability of action under Rule 9.
I am submitting by resolution a motion to censor Representative Clay Higgins for violating Rule 9 by bringing discredit and disgrace to the House of Representatives.
And that is
There's an official motion, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman attempting to give notice under Rule 9?
I am attempting to give notice that I intend to bring a censure motion, resolution, upon return to this House of Representatives. And I would hope that every member of this body understands that no person, particularly those who contribute to communities, who are entrepreneurial, who give to our communities by being nurses and first responders and teachers, that those individuals, those children, no longer have to live in fear or intimidation because of any words or posts that come from members of this body. That it is time to end hate and the rhetoric of hate, and that it is not becoming on any member to continue to push this type of rhetoric on any platform, let alone from the House of Representatives. And with that,
ask for unanimous consent.
I ask unanimous consent to accept my motion to censor Representative Clay Higgins for violating Rule 9 by bringing discredit and disgrace to the House of Representatives.
An objection is heard.
Now, of course, that was Congressman Stephen Horsford, chair of the Congressional Black Caucus, and he was referencing again the racist tweet of Louisiana Congressman Clay Higgins. Now, after Horsford did that, then Louisiana Congressman Steve Scalise stood up and objected. Listen to what he said.
It's been deleted already and removed, but I object to the motion. And if we want to go through every comment and tweet from the other side, we'll be happy to do it.
Gentleman has not been recognized. Does the gentleman seek recognition? For what purpose does the gentleman from Louisiana seek recognition? Gentleman is recognized. Nope. The objection has been heard. Pursuant to Clause 12 of Rule 1, the chair declares the House in recess, subject to call of the chair.
They recessed instead of dealing with the racist comments by Clay Higgins. Now, Speaker, I'm going to show you this here. Give me 1 second. So Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, from Louisiana, addressed this issue. And so let me play for you. Give me a second. I'm going to play for you what he said after all of this happened. Watch this.
Any comment on the tweet that Clay Higgins put out today about Haitians?
I heard about that on the floor just now as well. Clay Higgins is a dear friend of mine and a colleague from Louisiana, and a very frank and outspoken person. He's also a very principled man. And I think he tweeted, I didn't even see it, but he tweeted something today about Haitians, and he was approached
by January 20th.
Okay. Well, look, he was approached on the floor by colleagues who said that was offensive. He went to the back. I just talked to him about it. He said he went to the back and he prayed about it and he regretted it and he pulled the post down. That's what you want a gentleman to do. I'm sure he probably regrets some of the language he used, but you know, we move forward. We believe in redemption.
If y'all want to see what's bullshit, you just heard from Speaker Mike Johnson. He basically wants you to dismiss it. Oh, he went to the back, he prayed on it, he deleted. We believe in redemption. But what about the folks who have been attacked? What about the people who are fearing for their safety? What about those individuals? Jolene, go ahead. You heard all of that exchange there, and you saw how dismissive the Republican Speaker of the House and Republican Steve Scalise, both of them from Louisiana, how dismissive they are about the tweet from their racist colleague from Louisiana, Clay Higgins.
From Louisiana, nonetheless, and the history between Louisiana and Haiti, and the history between Haiti and the United States, that is at the heart of it all. But that is not lost on us, Roland, because this is how they do it. And we can pray on it as well. And we are going to fight back. So we are going to continue to pray and we're going to fight back because this is unacceptable. This is cowardness for people in power to use this type of words. And those words were literally targeted at the Haitian Rouge Alliance for standing up on behalf of the community and against those vile, racist, anti-white supremacy ideologies. Those words were directly launched at Haitian Rouge Alliance, and we are not going to stand by. We will pray and we will act.
All right, then. Well, we certainly appreciate you joining us on today's show. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
All right, folks, going to go to a break. We're going to come back. We're going to talk about this with our panel. Again, that literally has been happening in the past hour to an hour and a half on the House floor. But Clay Higgins is not a stranger to saying racist stuff. Wait till we show you what he had to say, which caused him to resign as a sheriff in Louisiana. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network.
Bob and I both voted for Donald Trump.
I voted for him twice. I won't vote for him again. January 6th was a wake-up call for me.
Donald Trump divides people. We've already seen what he has to bring.
He didn't do anything to help us. Kamala Harris, she cares about the American people. I think she's got the wherewithal to make a difference. I've never voted for a Democrat.
Yes, we're both lifelong Republicans.
The choice is very simple.
I'm voting for Kamala.
I am voting for Kamala Harris.
In 2016, Donald Trump said he would choose only the best people to work in his White House. Now those people have a warning for America. Trump is not fit to be president again. Here's his vice president.
Anyone who puts himself over the Constitution should never be president of the United States. It should come as no surprise that I will not be endorsing Donald Trump this year.
His defense secretary.
Do you think Trump can be trusted with the nation's secrets ever again?
No. I mean, it's just irresponsible action that places our service members at risk, places our nation's security at risk.
His national security advisor.
Donald Trump will cause a lot of damage. The only thing he cares about is Donald Trump.
And the nation's highest-ranking military officer.
We don't take an oath to a king or a queen or to a tyrant or a dictator. And we don't take an oath to a wannabe dictator.
Take it from the people who knew him best. Donald Trump is a danger to our troops and our democracy. We can't let him lead our country again.
I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message.
IVF is a miracle for us because it allowed us to have our family. After having my daughter, I wanted more children, but my embryo transfer was canceled 8 days before the procedure. Donald Trump overturning Roe v. Wade stopped us from growing the family that we wanted. I don't want politicians telling me how or when I can have a baby. We need a president that will protect our rights, and that's Kamala Harris.
I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message.
Billionaire who has not stopped whining about his problems.
Oh, she had a big crowd. Oh, the crowd.
This weird obsession with crowd sizes. It just goes on and on and on. America's ready for a new chapter. We are ready for a President Kamala Harris.
I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message.
The overturning of Roe almost killed me. I had a blood clot in my uterus that caused my labor to have to be induced because of the overturn of Roe v. Wade. I wasn't able to get life-saving treatment sooner. I almost died. And that's because of the decision that Donald Trump made.
I was able to get Roe v. Wade terminated, and I'm proud to have done it.
The doctors and nurses were afraid that if they treated me in the incorrect way, that they would be prosecuted for that. And that's appalling. Donald Trump says that women should be punished.
Do you believe in punishment for abortion? There has to be some form of punishment. For the woman? Yeah.
I believe that women should have reproductive freedom to make the choices about their own bodies. 4 more years of Donald Trump means that women's rights will continue to be taken away one by one by one by one. This has to stop because women are dying.
I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message.
Hey, it's John Murray, the executive producer of the new Sherry Shepherd Talk Show.
This is your boy, Earthquake.
And you're tuned in to
Roland Martin, Unfiltered.
Folks, we've been talking about this racist tweet posted by Congressman Clay Higgins of Louisiana that have been targeting Haitian immigrants. Now, he took it down after he was confronted by black members of Congress. But this is not his first time showing how his racist comments. Listen to this. This happened in 2016. Give me 1 second. I'm going to go ahead and set it up because when I saw this, I saw a post earlier that talked about Clay Higgins, and so he's no stranger to this kind of stuff.
The Gremlin Street Gang is responsible for hundreds of violent crimes, murders, armed robberies, witness intimidation, burglaries, drug trafficking, extortion, and brutal beatings. We've arrested 10 of these thugs and have warrants on 7 more. Every one of these animals is most definitely armed and dangerous. Darren Carter, Aaron Carter, Travis Cooper, Cody Guidry, Jaron Diggs, Kirkland Demochet, and Jonathan Landry. We have felony warrants for your arrest. You will be hunted. You will be tracked. And if you raise your weapon to a man like me, we'll return fire with superior fire. Darren Carter, You think men like these are afraid of an uneducated, 125-pound punk like you that's never won a fair fight in your life and holds your gun sideways? Young man, I'll meet you on solid ground anytime, anywhere, light or heavy. Makes no difference to me. You won't walk away. Look at you. Men like us, son, we do dumbbell presses with weights bigger than you. And the convicts in jail, most of those men are good people who just found themselves crossed with the law. They're not evil, and they don't respect you or any punk like you. They'll toss you around like a rag doll. I encourage every citizen watching this to look into your own heart and find the American courage that conquers all evil. I implore you to listen to this message and stand up. Take back your streets. Take back your country. Come forward with information about these heathens that have terrorized your community. And for those who would use this message as a way to create false racial division in our country, take a close look behind me. Standing next to every cop is a leader of our black community. This is not about race. It's about right versus wrong. One last message to the gremlins. You don't like the things I've told you tonight? I got one thing to say. I'm easy to find. On behalf of the St. Landry Parish Sheriff's Office, the Louisiana State Police, the U.S. Marshals, and every cop and law-abiding citizen from sea to shining sea, I'm Captain Clay Higgins, asking every patriot to stand up, share this video, and send a clear message to the world. We're Americans. We'd rather die on our feet than live on our knees.
Well, folks, shortly after that, he had to resign from the sheriff's office. He said he tendered his resignation, but he was really being forced out. My panel, Joe Richardson, civil rights attorney out of L.A., Rebecca Carruthers, vice president, Fair Election Center out of D.C., Jonathan Harris, Democratic political commentator out of Los Angeles, and also former Illinois Congressman Joe Walsh, who joins us. He has been campaigning on behalf of Vice President Kamala Harris in Pennsylvania. Congressman, I want to go to you first. We're going to talk to you about that effort there, but I had to bring you in on this. And look, you were no stranger to saying some wild, incendiary things when you were in Congress. You've since apologized for a lot of those comments. You have been calling out your party, especially since Donald Trump has taken a hold of it. And what you see here, that vile, disgusting tweet that Clay Higgins put up about Haitian immigrants, and he had to be forced to take down. And Speaker Mike Johnson said, oh, talks about how great of a guy he is, and he's a friend, and how he prayed about it and took it down. But this goes to show you, when Trump and Vance, when they take the lead, it simply infects, causes an effect in the party, and affects so many different people.
Hey, Roland, good to be with you, my friend. Look, I'll be blunt. Coming from the right-wing base like I do, and coming from right-wing media like I do, the cruelty, the bigotry, and the fear sells. Look, sadly, it sells with the Republican Party base. They eat this up. What Clay Higgins tweeted today about Haitian migrants, the Republican Party base loves that. Republican Party leaders and right-wing media voices try to scare the hell out of their voters that there are black and brown people on their streets committing crimes, eating your cats and dogs. It's all about scaring people and creating hate and bigotry. And Roland, look, you're right. I used to be in that world. I did more of that than I'm proud of doing. But the GOP base is now fully radicalized. They eat this up.
You mentioned the word cruelty, and I want to go to Rebecca. Rebecca, it was Adam Sir who wrote a piece in The Atlantic with the headline that said, "The cruelty is the point. President Trump and his supporters find community by rejoicing in the suffering of those they hate and fear." That's what this is. And so get the hell out by January 20th. We don't want these people here and making up the lies about them eating cats and dogs and ignoring what the city leaders are there saying, ignoring what the Republican governor of Ohio has said, ignoring what the CEOs there say, what they've said about Haitian immigrants being hard workers and putting in the time and showing up on time, they don't care. They are sitting here absolutely talking to their white base. And what they're doing is literally what I wrote in my book, White Fear, how the browning of America is making white folks lose their minds.
I was thinking about that headline exactly. Cruelty is the point, and that's what we're seeing here. What's also ironic is even Trump's the words he was using in Pennsylvania, the audacity of that Pennsylvania audience to smile, nod, and cheer when it was just a few years ago that 3 white men faced 1,400 counts of bestiality, having sex with animals in Pennsylvania, and animal cruelty. They were having sex with dogs, they were having sex with cows, a goat, and lots of horses. I think they got between 20 to 40 years. So wonder if the narrative became, hey, white people are sleeping with dogs and horses, right? That is irresponsible language. What we've seen with these Haitian Americans who are in this country, I would just say for folks out there, be careful and you better leave these Haitian Americans alone because they are descendants of that 1791 to 1804 group of Haitians who demanded and fought in a revolution for their freedom. They were the first set of Black folks in the Western Hemisphere who demanded, who fought and gained their freedom. That's who these people are. So y'all better leave them alone. Because if they show up in their numbers on or before November 5th, then many of these people with this very dangerous and racist language are going to get kicked out of office. You need to leave these people alone, let them live their lives because they are living their lives peacefully and they are showing that they are beneficial to the societies in which they have entered in this country.
But Joe, they can't do that because what they've done is they have set up this whole thing and Trump is the ringleader. I mean, the language that he uses, and it has gotten more coarse, more evil, more sadistic the closer we get to the election.
Right, absolutely, Roland. And look, go ahead. Joe, I'm gonna go to Joe the lawyer, then I'm gonna go to Joe Walsh. Joe, go. My bad, sorry. I forgot we had 2 Joes. Joe, go. Go, Joe the lawyer.
Right on. Well, thank you, Joe. I appreciate it. So, yeah, I mean, this is really terrible and incredible. So everyone on that side of things has a fear. There are people that are driven by fear. They're motivated by fear. Sometimes very hardworking, regular folks that are just susceptible to what the former president would have to say and to what people on the far right would have to say. But there's also this larger fear of the former president and his cronies. The idea that they're up against the wall, that they could actually lose. And in his actual case, he actually would have to deal with facing the music related to all of his legal issues. So what's going on is vile, it's racist, it's contemptible. It's interesting that in the congressional session, the one that was overseeing as speaker is Jay Obernolte, who we're trying to overthrow as we speak here with Derek Marshall in this area. But they're going to do everything that they can because they're fearful, not because things aren't changing, but because things are. So we have to remember that. I'm glad that they've brought this citizen complaint. We have something going there. We will see what kind of fuel that it resolves. But I am with Rebecca in that you can never question the people that are on the right side of things. They find energy, they find vigor, and I believe that there's plenty of good people in this country that will stand with the folks, the Haitian immigrants that are here legally, that are being treated the way that they are, whose kids are scared to go to school, whose moms and dads are scared to go to work. We do believe that there's a brighter day coming, but you have to go through what you go through in the meantime, and it's really terrible that it's happening this way. But I do believe that there will be an end and a successful end for those that are on the right side.
Joe Walsh.
Just quickly, I come from the Republican Party base. The Republican Party base is primarily middle-aged and older white folk. And as we've all said for years, they've been concerned, scared, and angry about all these changes in life. I believe generally they're good people, but demagogues. I mean, the world I come from, Fox News and right-wing media and Donald Trump and Tucker Carlson and J.D. Vance, they demagogue and try to scare the hell out of these people. That's what they're doing. Trump's got to lose, but then after Trump loses, we've got to reach out and grab these people and try to welcome and bring them back into the world of truth.
Jonathan, this was a couple of weeks ago. This is the director of the Texas Department of Public Safety, Steve McCraw. This is the language that he used in a news conference. Listen.
I mean, some people find it harsh using the term, infestation and cockroaches and things like that. All you have to do is interview or spend some time with some victims, some migrant victims that are here in this country. And you'll understand that the governor has not overstated the issue. In fact, he's well stated the issue. And Texas is not going to allow any part of this state to be infested with that type of disease.
He is literally saying cockroaches, disease. This is the director of the Texas Department of Public Safety. The Texas Rangers, now the baseball team, they are considered the creme de la creme of law enforcement in Texas. They fall under Texas DPS. This is the leader.
One of the things that I can say about Donald Trump's sort of ascending in politics, if anything good came from it, is it sort of pulled the veil back on this sort of idea that we have moved beyond all of the racism that has been infesting this country since its inception. From the time he ascended, there's now never been a way to say, oh, this isn't actually happening. I mean, I remember when he was running in 2015 and 2016, and even Paul Ryan, and I mean, if Paul Ryan has to be the voice of reason in your party, something's wrong, said that his comments about a Mexican judge were, quote, textbook racism. And I've said, I spend most of my time on conservative media, on Fox News, Newsmax, et cetera. And one of the things that I've said even there is that Democrats have a horrifically bad messaging problem. Donald Trump is at this point with J.D. Vance running what I would say is an overtly racist campaign. It's not a dog whistle anymore. It's not Reagan talking about the welfare queen. It's not going, Nixon and his war against drugs. This is an overtly racist campaign. And the Democrats need to call it that. They need to call it exactly what it is, call out his history of doing this, highlight other members of the Republican Party's history of doing this, and put the Republican Party on the defensive and make them have to defend themselves and separate themselves from this rhetoric. But what I feel like the Democrats do very often is they just sort of let the Republicans run the narrative and kind of sit back on the sidelines. And it's like they need to be proactive about picking this up and calling it what it is. Don't tiptoe around it. It is just another example of overt racism. And that is the only thing that Donald Trump has to campaign on. He doesn't have a record to campaign on. So it's just racism.
But Jonathan, here's why I disagree with what you had to say. And Joe Walsh, love to get your thoughts. That is exactly what Donald Trump wants. Donald Trump wants a campaign on race. Donald Trump wants the Democrats focused on race. He wants Vice President Kamala Harris talking about race. That is exactly what he wants because he has nothing else. And so he wants it to be about race in crime, race in the economy, race in politics. That's all he has. And so, again, I remember it was before the debate. And my buddy Ron Brownstein wrote an article, and he said that Vice President Kamala Harris is really going to have to focus more on the unemployment and crime. And I said, no, she shouldn't. And then the debate happened. And I said, see what I was talking about, Ron? The point is this here. If you do what you describe, you're not playing offense. You're playing defense. Trump's whole goal is, how can he ain't getting above 46, 47. So he needs to bring her down here. That's why they've been going crazy with how she's running in Pennsylvania and Michigan and Wisconsin and North Carolina and Georgia and Arizona and Nevada, because she's not playing defense, Joe Walsh, she's playing offense. And that is what has been driving his campaign crazy. They've been trying to bait her. She won't take the bait.
Roland, I love you, but I'm with Jonathan on this one. I'm totally with Jonathan. She can do this taking the offensive. She needs to go at not just how Trump is a threat to democracy, how he isn't who we are. Democrats are always afraid to play in the culture war stuff, which is baloney, because most Americans are tolerant and most Americans are where Democrats are in these culture war issues. This issue of race, most Americans, most white Americans are with Kamala Harris and not with Donald Trump. He should be isolated with this.
See, the reason I got to disagree with you on that one is because it's in the data. It's in the data. The reality is this here. When you look at numbers, Obama got 39% of the white vote. He won because he over-indexed among African Americans and Latinos. The biggest fear that I had, Rebecca, with Joe Biden deciding not to run was what would happen to his white coalition. And Vice President Kamala Harris holding that white coalition. I get what Joe says, but you know what? A lot of those same white folks will vote for Donald Trump because of the interest. I was playing golf with a guy probably in his 60s, and he said, well, you and I probably on the opposite side. He's like, hey, it's a bunch of that crap I don't like. He said, but I'm voting for the policies. He just completely ignored everything that he says, everything that he does. He's like, I'm voting for the policies. And if you start playing their game, you stop focusing on what makes you you. Rebecca, go ahead.
Congressman Walsh, I know you don't know me, but I grew up in Omaha, Nebraska. I spent a lot of time in Nebraska. Nebraska, just in case folks aren't aware, is very white. And so I hear what you're saying, that they are good people, people with good hearts. I also understand the impact of those who are silenced or who are silent while bad things are happening. I understand that there are Trump supporters who aren't racist, full stop. I understand that. But what I also understand is that these same supporters see the very vile and racist things that Trump says and do, and they don't think that that is a disqualifying for them to be able to support him politically. That is my issue. It is, quite frankly, not my job to make white America and some of my fellow Nebraskans feel super comfortable and say, hey, come on in. I think it is for white people like yourself to have that conversation, because that's not the conversation that I can have. You have a shared and lived experience, and that's something that you have to evangelize on that particular issue. That's just simply, it's not my responsibility. It's not my emotional labor. One thing that I will say, to Roland's point, as we're seeing the browning and the blacking of America, as we're seeing the increase in white fear, one thing that I have noticed, even from people that I grew up with in Nebraska, and we're now, elder millennials, we're in our 40s, one thing that I've noticed is as there has been a decrease of white privilege that some of these white people are experiencing, for them that is oppressive because they're not getting that white privilege the way they did 10, 15, 20 years ago. And to me, white people like yourself need to have that conversation with other white people of what it means to pipe up, pipe down, step back, and not get the benefits of whiteness in America.
So, Joe Walsh, you're traveling the country on behalf of Vice President Kamala Harris and Governor Tim Walz. What are you saying to Republicans who say, hey, I can't get with this guy, or I'm looking at voting for someone else, or I'm not sure about her? Are you putting this front and center? Like, this is what this guy is saying, and what are they saying back to you?
Yeah, and by the way, Rebecca, thank you. I so appreciate every word you just said. Thank you. Look, I'm in front of independents and Republicans in every battleground state, and I'm going after Donald Trump with everything. It's not about policy. You may disagree with Kamala Harris on some policies, but this is who Trump is. He's a threat to democracy. He's the worst of us. He's a bigot. He's a racist. He's intolerant. He's cruel. It'll lead to 4 years of chaos. Roland, I throw everything in there. And I always end with, we are better than he is. We're better. Vote for Kamala Harris.
Well, I think, Jonathan, that what we are seeing here, and I'm telling you, it's 41 days left, you're going to see more of it. When you see a J.D. Vance admit to lying, well, I mean, if it means this, Cool. When you see them, ignore what the city manager says and the police chief says and the governor says. They don't care. They are going to advance the lie, and they have decided to make Haitian immigrants the centerpiece of their hate immigrants in America position. And it's going to continue. The attack's going to continue. And God forbid some nutcase ends up killing a Haitian immigrant. In fact, I saw this one graphic earlier where J.D. Vance was talking about all of this crime, and the police chief said in 21 years, not a single Haitian immigrant has murdered anybody in our city. They don't care about facts.
So going to what you're saying, because I agree completely with what you're saying, I would just say that I think where we separate is just that exactly the point you're making. I don't want it to rise to the level of someone being hurt. I don't want it to rise to the level of someone being harmed beyond how far they already have been. And I think that one of the things about Vice President Harris being a part of a current administration is she has a level of authority that I do believe that she should be using to call out Donald Trump for not condemning this coming from his own party, coming from his vice presidential candidate. Because what I find every single day in the media is that Donald Trump controls the narrative and everybody just responds to it. And it is long since past time. I said this for the past 3.5 years. President Biden has a phenomenal record, but he doesn't run on it. He doesn't tell people about it. And Vice President Harris as well. It's like at some point or another, you've got to stop letting Donald Trump control the narrative and you responding to it. And you set the narrative. You have the bully pulpit. You say these comments by this man are unacceptable. They could lead to someone being harmed. You just said that rhetoric is responsible for someone allegedly trying to kill Donald Trump. So if you believe that rhetoric is dangerous, then you have to hold that same standard for these comments about these vulnerable communities in our country and put them on the defensive. Make him not come out and condemn it and put the spotlight on that behavior, because if you don't, it's working perfectly because it's feeding into racist, but it's also flying under the radar. And that's what the problem is. That's what white supremacy has always done in this country, is it's flown under the radar and festered instead of shining a light on it. Like, you know, they want to talk about roaches, shine a light on roaches, and they scatter. And that's what Vice President, in my estimation, Vice President Harris and even President Biden should be doing with the authority they have with their office. Because if you don't, it's going to keep festering and keep dog whistling to all the right people, and that is going to get someone hurt.
Well, Joe Richardson, here's the thing, though, and I totally understand that particular point. But here's what happens. Look at the interview with Dana Bash and CNN. Nearly every question was, Trump says this, how do you respond? The interview going around, Jake Tapper is interviewing Nancy Pelosi. Trump says this, how do you respond? And so that's why when the question was asked, well, Trump questioned your blackness, and she went, same old stuff, next question, because they wanted her to go into it. She was like, I'm not wasting my time. And so, again, I get the point. And I firmly believe in fighting back and swinging back. But what I also understand is, if I'm playing on your turf, then I'm not concentrating on my game.
Yeah, I mean, I think they've done a very good job, actually, the campaign of dictating the narrative. I think the point that Jonathan was making about not running on the record was probably more true when Biden was the guy. Biden's not the guy now, but Harris has to thread this needle where she has to be, and she's successful at it because most people see her as the candidate of change, even though she's in the administration. So she doesn't go out of her way to say, this is what I would do differently than Joe Biden. She gives Joe Biden his flowers, but still lets you discern that some things that she would do would be different. So you skip over something there, but you still run as your own person. You still dictate the narrative, but I think you can walk and chew gum at the same time in that, yes, I think you can address some of these things that we're talking about here.
But she has.
Still do it.
But she actually has. And so
right.
do you keep doing it? Do you keep doing it? And that's really the conundrum that you sort of get caught up in. And what you're doing is, I think what ends up happening is you're actually end up doing what Jonathan says. You're not discussing your plans, your policies. You're responding to him.
I think you do it as a sub of your own narrative, though. I think you still do it within the context of your own narrative. Here are the points that we know we want to make. And BTW, IJS, they made this point, and this is bull crap, and here's why. And I think you have to build the bridge towards folks that Joe Walsh is connecting with right now. People who don't want to necessarily hear they're racist, right? Even though they might be. This is the question I ask. If you had cancer or a terrible disease, but you were undiagnosed, would you still have it? Yes, you still have it. Is the goal to make somebody that's not racist, somebody that's racist not racist? Yeah, that's a long-term goal. But is the goal right now in the next 60 days or so to get them to vote Harris, regardless of whether or not they're racist? Let's do whatever it is that gets us there, because there were people in 2008 that voted for Barack Obama while they were calling him out of his name. So you have to walk and chew gum at the same time. I think you can attack and deal with those issues as part of your narrative, but she can still also, and she has, take credit for what's been happening, but still run as her own person, show the distinguishing factors between her and Biden for those that don't necessarily see that there's a difference between her and Biden. And then she can walk and chew gum at the same time. I'm not saying that it's easy, but she can do it.
Well, listen, there's 41 days left, Joe Walsh, and at the end of the day, she has to continue to make the case for why to vote for her. I think we're going to talk next with our next panel, next guest, about today's economic speech. Again, if you get roped into Donald Trump's nonsense, you can sort of get consumed there. And I'll be honest with you, Joe, these media folks will love nothing better than the cat fight, because that's really what they want to encourage. They keep yelling, she's not doing any interviews discussing policy, because they're not trying to talk about policy.
But I got another one for you, Roland.
Go ahead.
I know you disagree with me. She should go on Fox News, accept that debate, and kick Trump's ass on Fox News.
I think, yeah, the reason I do disagree because is because Fox News, after they paid a $787.5 million settlement, and they are still in the middle of a lawsuit. So the Smartmatic lawsuit. So my deal is they have disqualified themselves from holding a debate. I don't think that you reward them and their behavior, because the actions they took in 2020, they were tied directly to Donald Trump in advancing his lies. And so I think you have to make them pay by saying, no, I am not going to reward you for what you actually did. And so that's just how I see that. So listen, stay out there, keep it up. Hopefully these Republicans and independents are listening to you and others, because you're absolutely right. This man is pure evil, and he has no business being back in the Oval Office. I don't even want this man driving near the White House.
Amen.
All right, Joe, thanks so much. I appreciate it. Folks, when we come back, we're going to talk about Vice President Kamala Harris' economic speech today. She focused again on policy, what that means. So can't wait to have the conversation. Don't forget, support the work that we do. Folks, the conversation we just had, CNN not going to have that conversation. Not MSNBC, not Fox News, not ABC, not CBS, not NBC, none of them. And so when you support our show, you are supporting the work. You can send your check and money order to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C., 20037-0196. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle, Roland at RolandSMartin.com. Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. We'll be right back.
He told us who he was.
Should abortion be punished?
There has to be some form of punishment.
Then he showed us.
For 54 years, they were trying to get Roe v. Wade terminated, and I did it, and I'm proud to have done it.
Now Donald Trump wants to go further with plans to restrict birth control, ban abortion nationwide, even monitor women's pregnancies. We know who Donald Trump is. He'll take control. We'll pay the price.
I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message.
Bob and I both voted for Donald Trump.
I voted for him twice. I won't vote for him again. January 6th was a wake-up call for me.
Donald Trump divides people. We've already seen what he has to bring.
He didn't do anything to help us. Kamala Harris, she cares about the American people. I think she's got the wherewithal to make a difference. I've never voted for a Democrat.
Yes, we're both lifelong Republicans.
The choice is very simple.
I'm voting for Kamala.
I am voting for Kamala Harris.
In 2016, Donald Trump said he would choose only the best people to work in his White House. Now those people have a warning for America. Trump is not fit to be president again. Here's his vice president.
Anyone who puts themselves over the Constitution should never be president of the United States. It should come as no surprise that I will not be endorsing Donald Trump this year.
His defense secretary.
Do you think Trump can be trusted with the nation's secrets ever again?
No. I mean, it's just irresponsible action that places our service members at risk, places our nation's security at risk.
His national security advisor.
Donald Trump will cause a lot of damage. The only thing he cares about is Donald Trump.
And the nation's highest-ranking military officer.
We don't take an oath to a king or a queen or to a tyrant or a dictator. And we don't take an oath to a wannabe dictator.
Take it from the people who knew him best. Donald Trump is a danger to our troops and our democracy. We can't let him lead our country again.
I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message.
IVF is a miracle for us because it allowed us to have our family. After having my daughter, I wanted more children, but my embryo transfer was canceled 8 days before the procedure. Donald Trump overturning Roe v. Wade stopped us from growing the family that we wanted. I don't want politicians telling me how or when I can have a baby. We need a president that will protect our rights, and that's Kamala Harris.
I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message.
Here's a 78-year-old billionaire who has not stopped whining about his problems.
Oh, she had a big crowd. Oh, the crowd.
This weird obsession with crowd sizes. It just goes on and on and on. America's ready for a new chapter. We are ready for a President Kamala Harris.
I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message.
The overturning of Roe almost killed me. I had a blood clot in my uterus that caused my labor to have to be induced because of the overturn of Roe v. Wade. I wasn't able to get life-saving treatment sooner. I almost died. And that's because of the decision that Donald Trump made.
I was able to get Roe v. Wade terminated, and I'm proud to have done it.
The doctors and nurses were afraid that if they treated me in the incorrect way, that they would be prosecuted for that. And that's appalling. Donald Trump says that women should be punished.
Do you believe in punishment for abortion? There has to be some form of punishment for the woman. Yeah.
I believe that women should have reproductive freedom to make the choices about their own bodies. 4 more years of Donald Trump means that women's rights will continue to be taken away one by one by one by one. This has to stop because women are dying.
I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message.
Carl Payne pretended to be Roland Martin. Holla!
You ain't got to wear black and gold every damn place, okay? Ooh, I'm an alpha, yay. All right, you're 58 years old. It's over.
And you are now watching
Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Uncut, unplugged, and undamn believable.
Keep telling Chris Spencer I'll be 58 in 2 years. Nice try. But your ass damn near 65. All right, y'all. The Federal Reserve recently slashed interest rates. The first rate cut since March 2020. The half-point move paves the way for lower borrowing costs on everything from mortgages to credit cards. This is also Republicans, boy, they're losing their mind. Oh, my God, this is helping Vice President Kamala Harris with the campaign. She also today released her economic plan. We're going to talk about that as well with Morgan Harper with the American Economic Liberties Project. Always glad to have you back on the show, Morgan, and condolences for your recent loss. So glad to see you.
Thank
and
you.
Prayers for your family. So let's talk about this rate cut. So for the yahoos in the back, who don't know a damn thing about the Federal Reserve, who don't know a damn thing about inflation or unemployment, explain why the Federal Reserve took the action that they did.
Yeah, so, the Federal Reserve is responsible for guiding the monetary and macroeconomic policy of the United States. And it's made up, I think this is an important point too, just as we're talking about some of the politics around this. It's made up of representatives from around the country. Some they are appointed by President Biden and have to go through Senate confirmation, but then also they are the representatives from the regional banks that are actually selected by the banking community in some of these regions. So it's a fairly mixed political environment, I would say, of the average person that's sitting on the Federal Reserve Board. All that being said, so what do they do? I mean, one of the primary tools that they have is controlling interest rates and deciding whether or not to increase them or to lower them. And this decision to lower rates was probably driven by a couple of things. I mean, one, like we've talked about a lot on the show, is inflation. It's been a constant from our lives over the last few years. The prices are something that are top concern to both the policymakers that sit on the Federal Reserve and lots of people in Washington and all of us that are paying these costs. And so, the fact that we are now seeing inflation actually level out quite a bit and lower, that now we're almost approaching the Fed's goal of having just 2% inflation, was a good sign about the strength of the economy, about the fact that the Federal Reserve could reduce these rates and not necessarily lead to a lot of what's called kind of juicing or too much demand, or that would potentially help to spur more inflation. The other thing that I would say is important to note, and what likely drove some of this decision, though it's impossible to know, they don't tell us their full exact reasoning, but the fact that we are seeing a little bit of an uptick in unemployment. Key point, unemployment is still at an overall historic low. It's just a little bit over 4%, but we are starting, and as we talk about when I come on and with the jobs report, just steadily little increases. And so, by decreasing the interest rate, which they've done at this, 50 basis points, half a percentage point, 0.5 percentage point. Some of this terminology can get confusing. What they've done is hopefully then spur some of the growth and business activity that might be likely to also increase employment. So those two factors, inflation kind of steadying, and then also maybe a little bit of an increase in unemployment, were likely to be relevant considerations for them in making this decision to reduce rates.
The other thing is that I need people to understand, interest rates are not supposed to be 0.0. I mean, here's what people don't seem to understand. 2008, we had a massive financial crisis driven by the housing industry. 2009, 2010, and 2011, we were in recession. You had Biden trying to bring us out of that. Then all of a sudden, the economy began to shift and turn in 11, and then 12, and then it began to pick up 13, 14, 15, 16. But what happened was we kept interest rates low all that period. Then they were low in 17, 18, 19, 20. Then, of course, COVID hits. Now it's 20, now it's 21, now it's 22, it's 23. The reality is the economy is not designed to have interest rates that low for that long of a period of time. Am I crazy?
No, right. Yeah. I mean, there is some benefit to having a return on money, right? I mean, that incentivizes savings. If you, over the last couple of years, have had a savings account or a CD that you put money into, then that gives you a return. When there's no cost of borrowing, well, then that can lead to the folks that are in the best position to borrow a lot of money, big businesses, the banks themselves, that are able to then get as much money as they need. And it isn't necessarily, or as much money as they want, I should say, and it isn't necessarily money that they need. So, having some kind of interest rate does help to create more of that equilibrium. The other thing I would say is, those that are kind of bemoaning this lowering of interest rates, like what entities are directly impacted by this? It is large financial institutions. I mean, directly, the Fed's interest rate is controlling how much banks make from lending to each other. The impact on consumers and small businesses is kind of a secondary indirect impact, and is really left up to a lot of those institutions themselves to decide how much of that decrease in interest rate to pass along to some of us who are operating at a more typical level in the economy. And so, I think one of the things that's interesting here, when the rate cut was first announced, there was speculation about would that impact come to consumers? How long would it take in the form of lower credit card interest rates, for example, which, especially with the debt burden we're seeing right now and delinquency rate, that's a really important figure. And we saw two financial institutions come out of the gate just in a week. U.S. Bank, American Express announcing that they are going to be lowering their interest rates by the same amount of the Fed's interest rate cut. So, does that lead to like a huge difference in how much money people might be paying? No, because the credit card interest rates are so high. But I do think that's likely responding to an environment where there's more of an awareness of just how high are the interest rates that banks are imposing on things like consumer credit, and wanting to make sure that they're seen as being consumer friendly, given a lot of the policy decisions that have been made over the last couple of years, and especially out of agencies like the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, for example.
All right, today, Vice President Kamala Harris talked about her economic plan. She was in Pittsburgh at the Economic Club there. She described the economy's future if Trump also won the White House. Listen to this.
The American people face a choice between two fundamentally very different paths for our economy. I intend to chart a new way forward and grow America's middle class. Donald Trump intends to take America backward to the failed policies of the past. He has no intention to grow our middle class. He's only interested in making life better for himself and people like himself, the wealthiest of Americans. You can see it spelled out in his economic agenda. An agenda that gives trillions of dollars in tax cuts to billionaires and the biggest corporations, while raising taxes on the middle class by almost $4,000 a year, slashing overtime pay, throwing tens of millions of Americans off of health care, and cutting Social Security and Medicare. In sum, his agenda would weaken the economy and hurt working people and the middle class. You see, for Donald Trump, our economy works best if it works for those who own the big skyscrapers, not those who actually build them, not those who wire them, not those who mop the floors, well, I have a very different vision. I have a very different vision for our economy. I believe we need to grow our middle class and make sure our economy works for everyone.
Well, Morgan, that was some shade. This was a graphic that was also put out regarding her plan. Go to my iPad. And it lays out here, and I reposted this on Instagram because clearly a bunch of people can't listen, they can't read, and so therefore you give them a damn meme, they can at least look at it. Restore and expanded the child tax credit up to $3,600 a year, help more than 100 million Americans. Address scams of all kinds from robocalls and text to financial fraud. Continue to work to eliminate junk fees, which Republicans cannot stand. They want to get rid of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Invest in building resilient food supply chains. Tackle the opioid crisis. Help Americans access treatment. Extend the $35 cap on insulin and $2,000 cap on out-of-pocket cost to all Americans. Republicans absolutely oppose that. Call on Congress to pass the first ever federal ban on price gouging for food and groceries. Republicans voted against that. Strengthen health care for veterans. Revitalize competition in food and grocery prices. Republicans say, hey, don't do that. Expand the earned income tax credit to cut taxes for millions of workers. Create a new $6,000 tax cut to help families pay for the cost of a child's first year of life. Increase competition and demand transparency in the healthcare industry, lower household energy costs, and create millions of new jobs. Accelerate the speed of Medicare prescription drug negotiations, and expand and make permanent the tax credit enhancements for Affordable Care Act marketplaces. I guess, Morgan, that covers all these media people who say that she's not being specific about her plans.
Yeah, I continue to find that talking point just so funny because now we're at, I don't know, economic speech number 3. They also, and I think that's what your graphic draws from, they released an economic policy plan in conjunction with this speech that's building off of some of the prior content that the campaign has released. And so, yeah, I don't really follow that when people say, she's not putting out specific ideas. I think the other interesting thing to note, and that's cool really about some of this content that's coming out, is it is a combination of both things that have already been done or put into motion during the Biden-Harris administration, and then some new ideas that she's proposing. You know what I mean? Ideas that were already in motion, things like that you mentioned, the junk fees fight, that the FTC has proposed a ban on junk fees across the economy. Consumer Financial Protection Bureau has already looked at them specifically in the credit card industry on some of these fees and that they impose and penalties. The healthcare point about the prescription drugs and increasing competition, that is directly related to pharmacy benefit managers that are the middleman in deciding which drugs our insurance companies will cover. The insurance companies that PS often own these PBMs, which drugs they'll cover and how much that they're going to charge us. And so, you know, the Federal Trade Commission just sued last week the big, giant 3 PBMs that control 80% of the market. And then we have the new ideas that are really exciting and I think going to be appealing to a lot of folks. I mean, just looking at, you know, a tax credit for the first year of a child's life, you know, a lot of folks in my age cohort, just the cost of childcare is a big concern. So, you know, I think it's strong positioning. I mean, I don't come on as a political expert, but I do think she's in a strong position to be able to have that body of work and then also proposing ideas that, you know, certainly seem to speak to a lot of the issues that folks across the country are really concerned about.
I look at this, Jonathan, and I just sort of laugh at the folks who suggest that she's not offering any specific policy proposals. What the hell is this?
That's sort of the thing where I say very often that I would like for her to be more blunt, and not just her. It was a criticism I had at the Biden administration as well. Much more blunt about and kind of setting the narrative and come out and just say, here is my economic plan. Where is his? By saying where is his, she's really essentially calling out the media for not asking him about it. But it also puts him on the defensive. Then he has to come out and offer a coherent, not these rambling responses. I mean, talk about cognitive decline. I mean, these rambling responses that just kind of drift into nowhere. If she comes out and uses her authority, which she has as the vice president, as a part of a sitting administration, to say, here is my plan. But also, I think one of the issues that I have is that, and I believe, and people can disagree with me about this, some might not, but I believe that, yes, I'm glad that her campaign is trending in the right direction. But the fact that we're celebrating a sort of margin of error lead in battleground states and a national sort of just her little head neck and neck is not something we should necessarily celebrate. She should be having double-digit leads.
No,
she is against the
dude. I'm sorry, Jonathan. That's grossly unrealistic. That is not the country. Is that the country we're living in? Show me in the last 4 elections where a candidate, Republican or Democrat, had a double-digit lead. I mean, I get the theoretical, but that ain't reality.
I should be clear. I'm not saying literally. I'm just saying essentially, figuratively, the lead should be much greater, is essentially what I'm saying.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm just saying, hear me out. This is a criticism, like I said, that I've said on every network that I've been on extensively for 3.5 years, and you saw it reflected in President Biden's polling numbers. It was ridiculous that he was polling in terms of his approval rating as low as he was with successful as his administration has been. Her lead, she is running against a failed president who is a convicted felon. This is not something that should be neck and neck. And I think part of that is because for some reason, she and President Biden before her refused to run on their successes. You need to tell America that these road projects that you're seeing are because of their successes. You need to tell them what the CHIPS Act is and what it has done, what the Inflation Reduction Act has done. And that is specifically because of the Biden-Harris administration. And tell them that Trump crashed the economy into a recession before COVID because of his trade war with China, and that he is offering those policies again, but she doesn't do that. And that's sort of what my issue is. These are fantastic ideas and plans, but they are not being PR'd properly.
Listen, I get all of that. I've said a lot of those exact same things, but here's the reality we're dealing with, Rebecca. What is the number 2 cable network out of all cable networks? Fox News. Who controls talk radio? conservatives. What have conservatives done on the digital side? They've dominated digital media. So what you have is you have a total media, a right-wing media ecosystem that does nothing but drive negative messaging every single day about every single issue. And just look at the elections. We literally are a split nation. We are. When you look at Republicans, Democrats, when you look at the margin right now in the House, very narrow for Republicans, and the margin for the Democrats in the United States Senate. When was the last time you had 60 members of a party in the United States Senate? Well, they control the Senate with 60 votes. When the last time you had a party that had 275 or 290 votes in the House? You got to go back a real long time. And so, which then means we have to factor in political gerrymandering, which has also set this up. So that's what we're facing. So it's no shock you're not going to have a candidate that's going to have the kind of landslide. You're never going to see the landslide that Reagan enjoyed in 1984 versus Mondale. That ain't happening again. And so I just understand the reality. And so I get hypothetical, theoretical, what it should be, but it's not. When you have Republicans who say, I don't care, I can ignore the craziness, I can ignore the sexual assault, I can ignore the cheating with the foundation, I can ignore the cheating with his company, I can ignore the cheating on his wives, I can ignore grab him by the vagina, I can ignore all those things because we want power. That's just simply what we're looking at politically. Rebecca?
So there's a few things here. Now, for viewers, y'all understand that I do spend time criticizing the Democratic Party because I think that they do a disservice and they don't actually show up for Black people the way Black people show up for the Democratic Party. Full stop. I also think that the Democratic Party should do a better job at messaging. But let's also take a step back. What's unfortunate in this country, there's low literacy around civics. People literally don't understand how the process works. And so we saw an example at the top of the show tonight when we saw Speaker of the House Johnson ruling actually incorrectly according to the Roberts Rules of Order, because literally he's a part of a party that is a know-nothing party and they pride themselves on slowing down government. Or another example is last night we saw the very unfortunate state-sanctioned execution of a Black man in Missouri that should not have happened. But then we see on social media, people's response is, oh, well, this is the Democrats' fault.
Right.
And the reason why people thought those things is because of the lack of civic education. They didn't understand that this person was convicted of a state crime, which means that President Joe Biden, Vice President Kamala Harris, Kamala Harris can't do it because she is the vice president, but the president cannot pardon this particular person because it's a state law. The president only has the power to pardon on federal crimes, right? So that's one thing. But then also people didn't understand the connection that it was Republican leadership. It was Republican attorney generals, Republican governor. It could have been the Republican governor of the state who said, hey, you know what? Let's not release this particular person, but let's actually take a break and let's actually review what the district attorney is recommending, that we step back and we vacate this death sentence, right? But it also petitioned to the Supreme Court, and it was a 6-3 decision. It was six conservative judges who were appointed by Republicans. So people have to understand how civics work in this country because they're seeing stuff happen and they don't understand the why.
Joe Richardson, listen, the bottom line is this here. A number of great things done by this administration, and I absolutely agree. I have said to them directly the weak messaging, but here is the reality. When you have idiots in this country who just go along with it, who just say stuff and just literally just make stuff up, who cannot even operate by reason, who cannot operate by logic, there's this video that's going around social media of these college students where they're in a circle and they're debating, and I'm sitting here, and this one guy's literally walking through 4 different things that Vice President Kamala Harris has done. And this dude on upside, well, she just still ain't done as much as Trump. And then he goes, can you name what Trump has done? No, actually I can't. But I just know she ain't done better than Trump. We just got to accept the fact it's a lot of dumbass people in this country.
Well, it is a difficult thing. I mean, you want to be able to make information available. I think we need to bring back Schoolhouse Rock.
I've been saying that. I've been saying that. My Lord.
Bring back those things that break things down and make things simple. But when you think of what's going on and what we see, to your point, you can't blame Kamala Harris for dealing with the media on her terms and sticking and moving the way that she needs to. She gets plenty of information out. She gets it out directly to people. This economic plan is pretty extensive. It says a lot of things. But truth be told, she doesn't need to be all the way in the weeds either. And she can say, and she says enough, and she does enough to say, to Jonathan's point, okay, here's my plan. What's the other guy's plan? Now, the media, if they want to, they can say, well, we don't think she has a plan or she won't talk to us about a plan. But no, there actually is a plan there. And now you're going back to Trump and asking him what his plan is, as opposed to making articles based on his ramblings. So it is interesting. It's pretty frustrating, too, because there are a whole lot of people that don't want to understand what it is that's going on, not in the space to understand what's going on. But the Republicans, to their credit or to their discredit, depending on how you feel about it, are very, very good at breaking down stuff to 4th grade language. But that means hateful, that means ignorant, that means less than smart, if not outright dumb. And that is on some level what you're dealing with. But can you still speak in low language or regular language, not talk over people's heads, but still actually run on hope, inspire, build people up, and give them common sense information about the things that the administration has accomplished and the things that it wants to accomplish? Can you do that? Because if you can do that, I think that's the sweet spot that you need.
Bottom line here, Morgan, listen, all these media people, are they going to spend lots of time on her economic plan? No, because they want the horse race. They want the drama. And unfortunately, that's the fundamental problem. Our politics, people want to act like it's a reality show. And so what Trump does, he entertains. He is a drug for these media folks. So they don't want serious conversation. They want the show.
Yeah, I mean, building off of what a couple of folks have said on the panel, I would say, there seems like there's an opportunity for her, given that we're in this strange media environment that doesn't tend to focus on substance or doesn't get into a ton of deep detail. Given that there are a lot of accomplishments to run on, I do think that there's room for her to maybe be more specific about who are the villains that we're talking about. Talking about the PBMs. I mean, one of the giant corporations, United Healthcare, that's responsible for a lot of the increase in drug prices. Regardless of whether someone is well-versed in the civics of this country, they've probably heard of United Healthcare, and it's likely that they don't like them. Visa, the Department of Justice just sued Visa yesterday for their network fees that are skimming money off of small businesses, making our costs higher as consumers. Visa, everybody knows what Visa is. And if you talk to most small businesses owners in this country, they hate how much of their money goes to pay Visa to process debit card transactions. So, I think there's opportunity in the specificity, but clearly the foundations of the plan are there, and they've already started to have a big impact that could be really positive for a lot of Americans around the country.
Indeed. Morgan Harper, we appreciate you joining us. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for having me.
Folks, when we come back, we'll celebrate the life and legacy of a giant in the labor movement, Bill Lucy, who passed away today. Join the ancestors. We will pay tribute to him next, right here on Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network.
He told us who he was.
Should abortion be punished? There has to be some form of punishment.
Then he showed us.
For 54 years, they were trying to get Roe v. Wade terminated, and I did it, and I'm proud to have done it.
Now Donald Trump wants to go further with plans to restrict birth control, ban abortion nationwide, even monitor women's pregnancies. We know who Donald Trump is. He'll take control. We'll pay the price.
I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message.
Bob and I both voted for Donald Trump.
I voted for him twice. I won't vote for him again. January 6th was a wake-up call for me.
Donald Trump divides people. We've already seen what he has to bring.
He didn't do anything to help us. Kamala Harris, she cares about the American people. I think she's got the wherewithal to make a difference. I've never voted for a Democrat.
Yes, we're both lifelong Republicans.
The choice is very simple.
I'm voting for Kamala.
I am voting for Kamala Harris.
In 2016, Donald Trump said he would choose only the best people to work in his White House. Now those people have a warning for America. Trump is not fit to be president again. Here's his vice president.
Anyone who puts themselves over the Constitution should never be president of the United States. It should come as no surprise that I will not be endorsing Donald Trump this year.
His defense secretary.
Do you think Trump can be trusted with the nation's secrets ever again?
No. I mean, it's just irresponsible action that places our service members at risk, places our nation's security at risk.
His national security advisor.
Donald Trump will cause a lot of damage. The only thing he cares about is Donald Trump.
And the nation's highest-ranking military officer.
We don't take an oath to a king or a queen or to a tyrant or a dictator. And we don't take an oath to a wannabe dictator.
Take it from the people who knew him best. Donald Trump is a danger to our troops and our democracy. We can't let him lead our country again.
I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message.
IVF is a miracle for us because it allowed us to have our family. After having my daughter, I wanted more children, but my embryo transfer was canceled 8 days before the procedure. Donald Trump overturning Roe v. Wade stopped us from growing the family that we wanted. I don't want politicians telling me how or when I can have a baby. We need a president that will protect our rights, and that's Kamala Harris.
I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message.
Here's a 78-year-old billionaire who has not stopped whining about his problems.
Oh, she had a big crowd. Oh, the crowd.
This weird obsession with crowd sizes. It just goes on and on and on. America's ready for a new chapter. We are ready for a President Kamala Harris.
I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message.
The overturning of Roe almost killed me. I had a blood clot in my uterus that caused my labor to have to be induced because of the overturn of Roe v. Wade. I wasn't able to get life-saving treatment sooner. I almost died. And that's because of the decision that Donald Trump made.
I was able to get Roe v. Wade terminated, and I'm proud to have done it.
The doctors and nurses were afraid that if they treated me in the incorrect way, that they would be prosecuted for that. And that's appalling. Donald Trump says that women should be punished.
Do you believe in punishment for abortion? There has to be some form of punishment for the woman. Yeah.
I believe that women should have reproductive freedom to make the choices about their own bodies. 4 more years of Donald Trump means that women's rights will continue to be taken away one by one by one by one. This has to stop because women are dying.
I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message.
Hello, I'm Paula J. Parker. Truly proud on the Proud Family, Louder and Prouder on Disney+. And you're watching Roland Martin, Unfiltered.
William Bill Lucy, one of the most prominent labor leaders in U.S. history, is now an ancestor. Lucy was the Secretary-Treasurer of the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees for decades. He played a significant role in the 1968 Memphis sanitation strike. He also founded the Coalition of Black Trade Unionists and assisted in defeating and dismantling South African apartheid. Tributes have been pouring in all day for Bill Lucey. The folks at AFSCME released this statement from President and CEO Lee Saunders. Folks, let's go ahead and pull that up. He said Bill Lucey was a giant and one of the most accomplished and influential trade unionists ever in the country at any moment in history. He did as much as anyone to advance the dignity of all working people here in the United States and around the world. He was one of our greatest warriors ever for civil rights, labor rights, and human rights. That was Lee Saunders, who leads AFSCME. Claude Cummings, the Communication Workers of America, also released, he sent me a statement as well, sharing his thoughts about Bill Lucey. And he said that he was, of course, like many people, just stunned at his passing. He said in a text message that he sent me this morning when news came out, he said that I can truthfully say I probably would not be where I am today had it not been for Bill Lucey and CBTU. After attending my first CBTU convention in St. Louis, I became more engaged and enthusiastic about union work. I was shocked to see so many black people in a convention and amazed at how orderly and well run everything was. Bill was an amazing leader that cared more about the movement than he did about himself. His wisdom and counsel during these times will be missed. Sadly, he will not be around to see another historic election. I am sad I did not spend more time with him. For folks to understand, when you look at the labor movement, it played a critical role in the civil rights movement, but it was also one that did not necessarily welcome African Americans. When you talk about the trade unions and others, and it was leaders like Bill Lucey who constantly were pushing and pressing to expand the opportunities. What you have now, you look at the major unions in this country, half of them actually led by African Americans. And there's no doubt, if it was not for the work of William Bill Lucey, you would not see African Americans leading AFSCME and CWA and SEIU and so many others. Joining us right now to talk about the life and legacy of Bill Lucey, folks, is someone who knew him well. We talked about the CBTU. They, of course, very much involved in the work in this country. In fact, let me do this here. Before I do that, I actually want to read the statement that they actually put out on Bill Lucey, because again, and again, a lot of people who are watching, some may be saying, hey, I never heard of this guy, but there are a number of people who have done amazing things in this country that folks are not necessarily aware of, and not realizing the critical role that they played in political campaigns, the role that they played dealing with negotiating various deals with the White House. That was the work of someone like a Bill Lucey. And again, we can't underestimate the role that he played and what they were able to do and able to accomplish in changing the history of this country. I'm going to pull it up in a second, but let me bring up my guest right now. I want to make sure that we're good. Is our guest here? All right. Just want to make sure that we got, okay. Let's go to the head of the CBTU, Terrence Melvin, president of the Coalition of Black Trade Unionists. Terrence, just for folks who don't even know the history of Bill Lucey, just how crucial was he to the labor movement and for African Americans?
Look, Roland, let me first of all thank you for having the opportunity to be here with you on this evening. We have had a great loss in the labor movement on today. We have lost the conscience of the labor movement. For over 7 decades, Bill Lucey has been the one that has been pushing the labor movement to do right by black people, to make sure doors are open for black people within the movement. He has been in the halls of Congress. He has been at the White House over the last 7 decades to make sure that the plight of our people, black people, was looked out for, not only just Roland in this country, but his issues were international in scope. He was the president of the Public Services International Union in 1994. He was elected to that position, which is the largest public employee federation in the world. Bill Lucey has stature not just here, but if it came to civil rights, he was at the front. If it came to workers' rights, he was at the front. If it came to rights for black folks, he was at the front leading the fight. And he wasn't just a leader to us. He was a servant leader. Bill was always there to not see what he could do for himself, but what he could do for others. So we are truly mourning the loss of a great person, a great leader in our movement, in our society, with the loss of Bill Lucey going to the ancestors on this morning.
This was the statement that sent out. The great William Bill Lucey passed away quietly this morning at his home in Washington, D.C. He was comforted by his family, who asked for privacy and patience to process their profound grief and loss. Bill, who was 2 months shy of his 91st birthday, had been battling a series of health challenges. Needless to say, Bill's passing is a monumental loss being felt here and around the world. Bill Lucey has been the North Star of the labor movement for more than 5 decades. So many, including CBTU leaders across the country, have stood on his shoulders to reach their dreams. Today we grieve, but we also show an abundance of gratitude to have had Bill Lucey in our lives for so long. Bill's family is Bill's family is in the process of finalizing the program and arrangements for his homegoing services. We will share the information with you as soon as it is completed. Please keep the Lucey family in your prayers. When you talk about, again, his impact, he never actually retired from the labor movement.
No, not at all. He stepped down in 2012 as president of the Coalition of Black Trade Unionists, and I assumed that position at the time with his blessing. And although he stepped back from that position, he remained a great counselor and a mentor to many of us. As you read from Claude Cummings to other black labor leaders in this movement, we realize, Lee Saunders, we realize that we would not be in the positions that we are in today if it was not for Bill Lucey. Quietly, many times, behind closed doors at many times, but knocking down doors and making ways for us, and not being quiet, but stepping up and doing what was just and what was right for all of us in the movement. So no, he never retired. And I want to let you, I was with him just last week, and he was talking about the importance last week of electing Kamala Harris as president of these United States, and telling me to put the call out to all of our CBTU members that we have to double down and do what we can to make sure we are successful in this election, because everything is on the line.
Absolutely. And when you talk about the work, I had the opportunity to sit down with him in 2018 to talk about the 50th anniversary of the assassination of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And the role that he played there, standing with those workers in Memphis, with those sanitation workers. And it was a great conversation. We're actually going to play that interview at the conclusion of today's show. But we're talking about, again, someone who put it on the line. I talked about the African American leaders who now head labor unions. April Verrett is the leader of SEIU. She put this out: the SEIU family is deeply saddened by the loss of Bill Lucey, a true visionary whose work paved the way for millions of workers to have a voice on the job and in society. Our thoughts are with his family and our partners at AFSCME. Bill's legacy is alive in every fight we wage today. His understanding that worker power and racial justice are inextricably linked guides our union's approach to the challenge of the 21st century workforce. His work with the Coalition of Black Trade Unionists helped pave the way for other black leaders, including myself, and inspires us as we continue our work to build a more inclusive labor movement. Bill Lucey's spirit will live on in every picket line, every contract negotiation, and every vote for worker power. May his unwavering commitment to justice inspire us all to work harder, dream bigger, and fight smarter for the working people of this country. There are some folks, Terrence, who are watching who may say, again, I never knew him, but the reality is There are people whose pocketbooks have been impacted by his work because of the battles that were won for African Americans in unions and also non-African Americans.
Absolutely, Roland. I mean, and that is the key, and that is what I said earlier. Bill wasn't about putting himself in front of a camera. He wasn't about lifting up Bill Lucy. He was about doing what was just and what was right for all people. Not just black people, but all people that were struggling in this nation and across the globe. That was his passion, and that was what he was all about. It wasn't about Bill Lucy. It was about what Bill Lucy could do to move the bar a little higher for all those that need to be lifted up in this country and across the world. And there will be many that may not know the name Bill Lucy, but if you look and see the impact that he's had on society as a whole, when you look at what the impact he had on South Africa with the apartheid movement, that was a struggle that Bill Lucy was instrumental in getting companies to divest from South Africa to help move them and get them out of the apartheid regime that they were in. It was Bill Lucy that brought Nelson Mandela, raised money to bring Nelson Mandela, once he was elected president, to the United States to make a tour of the United States. Bill Lucy was doing these things, and he didn't have his name right up front tagged on it. He just did it behind closed doors, and he just made things happen. So there's so many people in this country that will not or may not know the name Bill Lucy, but will not understand that there's things in their homes, in their lives that are truly impacted by Bill Lucy. The fact that Bill Lucy saw a senator in 2012 or 2007 in Illinois and said he can be the first black president, and brought him to the CBTU convention and lifted him up, and was the first union organization to support Barack Obama, and did all he could behind the scenes to bring labor together to support Barack Obama and get him into the White House. Bill Lucy was behind that, and many people don't realize that.
Well, it's doubly sad this year because earlier this year, we lost Reverend James Lawson, of course, who led the Nashville movement, and he worked hand in hand with Bill Lucy there in Memphis for those sanitation workers. And so,
absolutely.
And in fact, and also about a week or so ago, Reverend Lawson's widow passed away. So lots of history, lots of our elders who are becoming ancestors, and so we certainly thank them for their work. Reverend Terrence Belvin, we appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much for having us here and lifting up Bill Lucy's work.
I appreciate it. Thank you so very much. Rebecca, I want to go to you. Again, there are people who are watching and listening who are going, all right, Roland, I know I've heard a lot of black people who've done stuff and never heard of this guy. But I think that's the point. And I bring up Reverend James Lawson for a reason. When I interviewed him, he said, my last memory of Martin was in the pulpit. He was talking about Mason Temple. That was April 3rd, 1968. He said Martin was in the pulpit, and I was on the last pew in the church. He said Martin was where he was supposed to be. I was where I was supposed to be. And there are people like Reverend James Lawson, like William Bill Lucy. They didn't seek the cameras. They didn't want, their goal was not to become civil rights heroes or become civil rights celebrities. They were focused on the work.
Unfortunately, I never had the opportunity to meet and work with Bill Lucy directly. But one thing that I will say is this, is that all of us have our lanes to run, and we have our race that we all get to do. All of us aren't a part of every part of the movement, but for those of us who are involved, we have to do our things, because we have to understand, even if the lights aren't there, even if the cameras aren't there, we still have immeasurable impact, and much of that impact we will never know. We will never know in our lifetime. But I am grateful that with some of the work that Mr. Lucy endeavored and did, that, you know, I do think he did understand before he transitioned how powerful he was, and many of the accomplishments and how it's impacting others. And I hope as he is resting with the ancestors, he's able to enjoy himself well-earned rest.
Joe, I got a chance to obviously meet Bill and talk to him. Unassuming, wasn't someone who wanted attention lavished on him. I mean, he was about staying sort of in the background and let me just do my work on behalf of the people.
Yeah, and he was doing the work. I mean, that's true leadership, right? You speak very, very loudly through what you do, not through what you say. There's substance all the way throughout. There's no person in a union in America, dare I say, maybe it's a broad statement, whose life was not made better by the sacrifices and the determination and the consistency of Bill Lucey and people like him. And not only did he do what he did stateside, but being instrumental in the things that helped to bring down apartheid as it was. And I'm sure he must have been just thrilled when Nelson Mandela came and visited after being released. Et cetera. And so, even you go back those 50 years, it'd be 55 years, 56 years now, to the sanitation workers strike that Martin transitioned during in Memphis in 1968. And he was there with him, and he continued on doing the work. He kept doing the work. He never stopped doing the work. And I guess we have to just be reminded of how incredibly, how much better our lives are because of the work of the unions, the combination of unions, how far we've been brought. And just like every other area, Bill Lucey was a big part of why Black people became leaders in the union movement and recognized as such as leaders of their organizations. He built bridges that way as well, and he helped build a bridge that even Barack Obama ended up walking across. And so we have to continue to be reminded of these significant contributions and to be reminded of what would be the way to honor him as an ancestor. What's the next step for the unions and for the labor movement? And hopefully the gentleman that we just had on, the president of the union that took over for him, as well as others, will continue on in that spirit and in that vein.
Jonathan, there is a direct link between labor and African Americans in terms of the civil rights movement known as the Black Freedom Movement. If you see the collage we put together of Bill Lucey, it shows that in that link between that battle for civil rights was directly also linked to politics, and they've been linked ever since.
Watching this, it's fascinating experience for me as a millennial. I mean, I think unless you grew up maybe during that time period, you might not even know about this man. I think a lot of people who maybe grew up in that time period might not know about his work because, as you highlighted, he wasn't about the cameras and highlighting that kind of work that way. But I think it actually goes to, not to veer off too much, but it goes to the importance of this platform that you've built, because I don't know of any other media outlet that would spend a segment on a person that maybe a lot of people don't know about, and actually educating people about not only his work and how it impacted Black America, how it really impacted all Americans through fighting for union work, and how, very similar, kind of what you said earlier, very similar to the feminism movement, where Black people were kind of excluded from that in fact, it is a lot of Black women who were key and instrumental in the feminist movement. It is a lot of Black activists and people like Bill Lucey that were essential to the labor union movement and strengthening them. And it's super important to have a platform that can do that. And highlight those things, because in fact there is such a horrible education system in this country that a lot of things that people end up learning about is through media, not through schooling, unfortunately, but through media. So the importance of a platform like this, I think, is super highlighted in a segment like this, and highlighting his work, and just kind of hoping that we, through the education and informing people, and even the generation after millennials, the Gen Z, that they learn about these people and that these unions didn't just kind of appear, right, that it was a lot of people's hard work, and that they too have a role in kind of doing that now, being what he was then. Right now.
Well, this is why Black-owned media matters, because look, even when you are prominent people like Cicely Tyson, who Richard Roundtree, they passed away, they got short shrift when it comes to mainstream media. We don't worry about what they do. Our job is to do what we do, and And the thing about it is, we also cover these folks not when they're gone, but when they were here, which is one of the reasons why we have the interview coming up next that I did with Bill Lucy in 2018. And so, yeah, you know, we purposely do these memoriams because they don't get their just due. And then people are then able to go to our app, they're able to go to our YouTube channel where they can see these things to get a better understanding of these giants that have done tremendous work in our community. And so, Jonathan, Rebecca, Joe, let me thank all three of you who've been on today's panel. I certainly appreciate y'all being on today's show. Folks, we were in Memphis in April of 2018 when they commemorated the life and legacy of Dr. King. He was assassinated, of course, in Memphis on April 4th, 1968. This was Bill Lucy speaking at Mason Temple. Speaking at Mason Temple, the day before, there was the AFSCME had a panel conversation, their I Am a Man panel conversation. We live stream all of the events around. You go to my iPad, folks. We live stream all of the events around that celebration. And so here was Bill Lucy speaking to the folks assembled at Mason Temple.
Thank you so much, Danny. Danny is a national treasure. There is only one Danny Glover who puts himself, his profession, his commitment, and his determination to speak truth to power on the line every day. I value your friendship. I value your friendship. Let me say to Bishop Blake how much the nation needs your leadership. 50 years ago, I sat in the chair that the brother is sitting in right on the end. On the night that Dr. King delivered what is called a mountaintop speech. Myself and 2 or 3 others had responsibility for the direction of this strike. But I say to you today, that without Jim Lawson, we would still be on strike. And I want to acknowledge Jim and his leadership, not just of the Committee on the March for Equality, but on the entire community, in getting them to understand the difficulties that these men face. This community was then, and perhaps is now, like many others, where the level of education, income, and the value of what you do is not measured properly. I always use the example that someone born in Iowa with a strong right arm that can throw a baseball 100 miles an hour, it is accepted they will be a millionaire. And the system gives them all the support to become one. But these men who picked up the filth from the city of Memphis, Tennessee, was not valued in the same way. They were looked upon as failures and therefore relegated to the role of sanitation workers. Long about June or July, the value of a sanitation worker goes up substantially as the temperature goes with it. And this city and every other city needs what they do without question. So to Baxter Leach, who walk every day, to Elmore Nickelberry, who paid his dues behind a garbage truck, to Mr. James Riley, who came in from Chicago to be a part of this. To each of you, I say, this city owes you a debt of gratitude. And this week is about reflecting on that and talking about how valuable it was, it is, and it will be in the future. Danny, I truly want to echo the sentiments that you reflected earlier. I feel honored to be here, to have been allowed to be a part of the struggle of these men is really a benefit that's hard to measure. The sanitation strike, as Jim pointed out, of 1968, brought to light one of the central problems in this nation and one of the great contradictions of our founding documents and our system of government. For 1,300 sanitation workers here in the city of Memphis, and millions more like them across this nation, the issue of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is fake news. Real fake news. This is the tragedy of 1968, and it's the tragedy of today, because millions of low-wage workers in every corner of this country get up in the morning, go to work every day, toil hard, and still have trouble getting out of poverty. 83 years ago, Franklin Delano Roosevelt gave to workers the National Labor Relations Act, which gave the opportunity to organize and bargain collectively to well-paid workers today. But to low-wage workers and public sector employees, they are almost specifically excluded from the benefits of bargaining collectively. We have men and women working 1, 2, and 3 jobs, just trying to keep the lights on. They seldom see each other and barely see the children because the system requires them to toil consistently every single day. We have to achieve for these workers the same benefits of well-paid workers in the private sector. To think through how to give voice to the millions, that's what this week is all about. To exchange ideas, to bounce ideas off of each other, is how we will come to what we must do in this environment. To those who work hard every day, play by the rules, and still seem to lack the ability to raise themselves out of poverty, we've got to come up with a plan because nobody else will. So when I say to Bishop Blake, you are a godsend, to partner with Lee Saunders and the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees on this mission is really what low-wage workers and poor folks have been waiting for a long time. And as Jim made the point, organized labor, we got to find out where the church is at before we get in trouble. We can't show up when we got a problem. We got to show up when the church got a problem. We got to show up when the community has a problem. Because together, we can alter the course of this nation. Out of our reality, we are being brought face to face with the vision of Dr. King. Dr. King said that labor and religion are two of the most powerful elements in our society. Yet we have never used the power of both to the benefit of all. We are at that point now, and it's not like we got a lot of options. We are solid trade unionists, and every union that is in this room has its own mission. And ours, it seems to me, is to make sure that the wealth of this nation is shared with the least of these in this nation. I joined this union many, many years ago on the hope that we could make a contribution to the improvement in the quality of life of people around us. And I think we have. We are, as the situation says, we are our brother's keeper. And so when our community is in trouble, we are in trouble. We are, and we have to ask ourselves, what do we bring to the table? As trade unionists, we bring the skills and abilities of trained and disciplined workers. So the question becomes, where are we? Where are we when the zoning commission is approving a liquor store on every corner? Where are we? Where are we in that discussion? Where are we when the planning commission meets and does damage to our community? Where are we? In our staff and mix, we've got some of the greatest professionals you ever laid eyes on who have the skills and abilities to compete with everybody downtown. When and where do we intervene and have input as our community needs parks and recreation for our children? Where are we when they're building more units than our neighborhoods and our schools can accept? I mean, are we quiet and silent, looking out after our own interests? We ought to be in the mix, fighting for and with the communities that we come from. Now, we know that every now and then we get 2 paychecks ahead and move out the neighborhood. But let me suggest to you that we are fundamentally 1 paycheck from the station that our friends and neighbors are when we leave. We don't have to be given a data report on low-wage communities. We can spot them when we drive by. We have a moral obligation to fight with those communities to improve themselves and the quality of life within them. Now, every now and then, like now, we have those who say, well, we just got to give up. Ain't no point in fighting back now. Trump is the president. Trump is not our problem. Yeah. These problems existed before Trump. Trump is a symptom of the problem. There are those who say, well, everybody who voted for Trump is a racist. I don't believe that.
No, I don't either.
Although I do believe that every racist who voted for Trump.
Amen. That's right,
So we as a movement have a moral responsibility to raise these questions. Our growing role as trade unionists is to do what we do best. That's organize, organize, and organize across our communities and their ways. And I know we have to, as trade union leadership, every now and then measure the return on investment. The return on our investment is the growing power in our community that is prepared to help us help ourselves. So those of you who come from major unions, who come from those institutions who are committed to social justice, the church and an alliance with us, we can change the environment we live in. So this week is about exchanging ideas, sharing visions and views, and making sure that we leave here with a true commitment to live out Dr. King's dream. Thank you so much.
Again, folks, that was William Bill Lucy speaking 6 years ago in Memphis at Mason Temple, of course, where we were commemorating the anniversary of the death of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. When we come back, you will hear my interview with Bill Lucy from 2018. We talk specifically about the sanitation workers' strike. He takes you inside what took place. We talked about who came up and how they came up with the phrase, I am a man. He talks about Dr. King coming to Memphis and what that strike was all about. It is an interview you do not want to miss. If you want to understand history, understand the role that he played, you want to be sure to check that interview out. Folks, we're going to go to a break. We'll be right back for our tribute to William Bill Lucy right here on Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network.
He told us who he was.
Should abortion be punished? There has to be some form of punishment.
Then he showed us.
For 54 years, they were trying to get Roe v. Wade terminated, and I did it. and I'm proud to have done it.
Now Donald Trump wants to go further with plans to restrict birth control, ban abortion nationwide, even monitor women's pregnancies. We know who Donald Trump is. He'll take control. We'll pay the price.
I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message.
Bob and I both voted for Donald Trump.
I voted for him twice. I won't vote for him again. January 6th was a wake-up call for me.
Donald Trump divides people. We've already seen what he has to bring.
He didn't do anything to help us. Kamala Harris, she cares about the American people. I think she's got the wherewithal to make a difference. I've never voted for a Democrat.
Yes, we're both lifelong Republicans.
The choice is very simple.
I'm voting for Kamala.
I am voting for Kamala Harris.
In 2016, Donald Trump said he would choose only the best people to work in his White House. Now those people have a warning for America. Trump is not fit to be president again. Here's his vice president.
Anyone who puts themselves over the Constitution should never be president of the United States. It should come as no surprise that I will not be endorsing Donald Trump this year.
His defense secretary.
Do you think Trump can be trusted with the nation's secrets ever again?
No. I mean, it's just irresponsible action that places our service members at risk, places our nation's security at risk.
His national security advisor.
Donald Trump will cause a lot of damage. The only thing he cares about is Donald Trump.
And the nation's highest-ranking military officer.
We don't take an oath to a king or a queen or to a tyrant or a dictator. And we don't take an oath to a wannabe dictator.
Take it from the people who knew him best. Donald Trump is a danger to our troops and our democracy. We can't let him lead our country again.
I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message. IVF is a miracle for us because it allowed us to have our family. After having my daughter, I wanted more children, but my embryo transfer was canceled 8 days before the procedure. Donald Trump overturning Roe v. Wade stopped us from growing the family that we wanted. I don't want politicians telling me how or when I can have a baby. We need a president that will protect our rights, and that's Kamala Harris.
I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message.
Here's a 78-year-old billionaire who has not stopped whining about his problems.
Oh, she had a big crowd. Oh, the crowd.
This weird obsession with crowd sizes. It just goes on and on and on. America's ready for a new chapter. We are ready for a President Kamala Harris.
I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message.
The overturning of Roe almost killed me. I had a blood clot in my uterus that caused my labor to have to be induced because of the overturn of Roe v. Wade. I wasn't able to get life-saving treatment sooner. I almost died. And that's because of the decision that Donald Trump made.
I was able to get Roe v. Wade terminated, and I'm proud to have done it.
The doctors and nurses were afraid that if they treated me in the incorrect way, that they would be prosecuted for that. And that's appalling. Donald Trump says that women should be punished.
Do you believe in punishment for abortion? There has to be some form of punishment for the woman. Yeah.
I believe that women should have reproductive freedom to make the choices about their own bodies. 4 more years of Donald Trump means that women's rights will continue to be taken away one by one by one by one. This has to stop because women are dying.
I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message.
Hi, I'm Jo Marie Payton, voice of Sugar Mama on Disney's Louder and Prouder Disney Plus, and I'm with Roland Martin on Unfiltered.
Being in here, being Memphis, the meetings, the conversations, all of these things, what does it bring you back to?
Well, it brings me back, Roland, to a point in my life where I learned the value of men who worked hard, yet the system denied them an opportunity just to be men. And I look at the photographs on the wall and think back as to what these men risked just to be treated with respect and dignity. And for me, it made the argument that I was one of the lucky ones. Really sort of standing on their shoulders, having an opportunity to not only help them be better men, but helping workers in general understand what it meant to struggle for just the opportunity to raise a family, to be a breadwinner, and to be treated with respect and dignity for the work that you did. And that's an incredibly humbling experience. But it also provided me with an opportunity to be able to talk this message and take this message and this movement to other people in other places.
Where were you in 68? Were you based here? Were you working elsewhere? How did you come to play a role in the sanitation workers' strike and what was happening in Memphis? I was assigned here from Detroit, Michigan, the day of the strike. I arrived here the night of the 11th and was on the line with the men as they decided not to go to work the morning of the 12th. So from day one, I was here. The strike lasted 67 days. I had the highest parking bill for short-term parking in the history of the organization. I parked at the Detroit airport short-term because it looked like it was only be 2 or 3 days. I came back 67 days with a $500 short-term parking bill. So, this was for not just black workers, but the lowest paid of black workers, an incredible struggle that they decided to take. It was not something that the union decided for them. They had simply spent enough time working with a lack of respect that they felt themselves they were entitled to, and they decided what they were going to do. And in contrast to a lot of the glory statements, what they said was, we want two things. We want to build a union, and we want the workers to afford that union so it could do what we wanted it to do. And that was the story that underlined this whole struggle. And for myself and other staff people, we learned a valuable lesson from them. I cherish the time I had to work with these men and respect them as men, which was a part of their struggle. What was it about them that was different than other folks you work with who were trying to fight for their labor rights? Was it something different about them? There was something fundamentally different about them. There's that piece in the Bible that talks about the poor being with you always, but nobody ever said they're going to be the same group. These were men who recognized that they had a job to do. They was proud to do it. They had families to raise. They were committed to raising their families with all of the difficulties that they experienced. They simply wanted to be treated as men and respected for what they did. There's an incredible religious community. Men committed to showing up every morning, working very hard, irritated by the fact that they couldn't get a simple problem solved. We weren't talking about 50 cents more an hour or $5 more. We were just simply talking about the issues that generated disrespect in them as they worked. And they felt that the organization they were trying to form would really give them help in addressing some of these issues. I mean, they didn't think it guaranteed victory, but they thought that it gave them a voice in those decisions that affected their work life. And ultimately, I guess, their social life also. Where did the I am a man come from? Well, we were about 3 to 4 weeks into the strike. This was not an economic strike. This was a strike about respect and about being treated with dignity. And because when I talked to someone, they said they couldn't take bathroom breaks, they couldn't take it was several things they talked about. They had nothing. It wasn't about money.
No, they couldn't wash up. At the end of the day, they had to go home just like they had worked all day. There was no such thing as lunch breaks. I mean, you had to. It was just a bad situation. We reflected, and not only poor management, but poor acceptance of the responsibility of management. And these men were paying the price for those who supervised them, lacking either in commitment or sensitivity. And we tried to think through what is it that would reflect not only their commitment to this, but what is it that motivated them. There was a white pastor of the church, Claiborne Temple, a young fellow by the name of Malcolm Blackburn. After one of the real difficult days, he and I were tasked with trying to come up with some slogan that would symbolize this. So many of the pastors, so many of the community leaders had talked about the difficulties that these men work with once they themselves learned. And so we took some of their speeches, some of their slogans, some of their comments, and we just put a whole lot of words on the table to try and see what we could come up with that would be simple and short. So after maybe 2 hours worth of working with it, we came up with the slogan, "I am a man." And it sort of reflected what we thought their commitment to this struggle was. They simply wanted to be treated as men. And, you know, across the South, you could go from boy to uncle to grandpa without ever landing on the position of man. And so when we put that on a sign, we had a march scheduled for the next day. We came up with that sign the night. The sign was printed in the print shop of the AME church. So when men saw them the next morning, folks were running, "I want a sign like that. I want that kind of sign to put around my neck when we march."
So why the underline of am?
Well, speaking personally, I am. And if you think for a moment, these are the lowest of the low paid. These are garbage men. I made friends with a fellow by the name of Ed Gillis. He had worked for the city for 20 years. He earned $7.80 a day. And he wasn't complaining about it. I mean, he was much more committed to getting a resolution to a today problem. He'd worry about the rest of it later on. But it gave him a sense of pride. And for the work that they did, they simply want to be respected for it. And I had an interview with a reporter, and I said, when's the last time you told your garbage man thank you? You know, when was the last time you told him you appreciate what he does? And folks said, well, I never thought about it. And that was almost symptomatic of the conditions that these men had. And that was across the city. It wasn't uniquely to the white community or the black community. They didn't get respect from anybody because nobody understood what they did. Most of us, we put the garbage out back and we figure it just disappears. And the fact that they wanted to be respected for what they did and to be treated as a man. And that became a piece of glue that you couldn't change to this day.
You said that these men, if y'all asked them to run through a wall, they would say, okay, let's go.
I mean, they were so committed to forming their union because they had developed among them the belief, not that the union was going to win everything for them, but at least they would have a voice. They didn't have Yale degrees or Harvard stuff. They were just plain workers. Most of them out of the South, most of them old before their time. I mean, this kind of work makes you old before your time. And they didn't have any misunderstanding about what was possible. They simply wanted an opportunity to be treated with decency and dignity. And when we developed the slogan, I hate to say it, we probably could have ended the strike the next day because they felt just that proud of their commitment to this. We had to have a conversation with them because they had grown attached to this sign. We said, look, if we're going to proceed on this, what we want you to do is go home and talk to your wife. Tell her what you're doing, and then tell her what you think you're doing. And if she agrees with you, we'll see you tomorrow. Because this is not going to end like that. And so everybody who came back said they had had that discussion. Now, I'm not convinced that everyone did, but at least they felt comfortable that they had their support mechanism at home in order. They were prepared to go the long term on this. And for us, what we brought to this was just a semblance of support to help them not only think through the issues, how to plan for what we thought was going to be some pretty tough days. And everywhere we see the signs, I am a man, for the two of us, it's certainly for me, it's almost humbling that men who were so desirous of believing in themselves was prepared to take those kinds of risks.
Does it bother you that every year when we approach April 4th, we forget what brought Dr. King to Memphis, and there's so much focus on him, rightfully so, but why he was here, and those individuals and their story and what they went through and what they experienced?
Well, it doesn't bother me. It makes me, I think, try to understand a bit more. Dr. King may have been a great civil rights fighter and certainly a great preacher, but he was also a very strong trade unionist. He believed in the ability of folks to sit down across the table from whoever made decisions on their work life and be a participant in that discussion. And if you recall, Dr. King was really trying to put a face on poverty. And here you had the perfect example of the working poor, people who worked every day, yet had no way of raising themselves beyond their situation or beyond their circumstance. And it was a movement that he had long said was necessary, that labor and religion and the civil rights movement was two of the three of the most dynamic forces in our society. And here you had men who as I said, they didn't graduate from Harvard, they graduated from the streets of hard times, but they recognized that their life could be improved if they had an opportunity to have an instrument to work for them and to speak for them. The mayor here says, well, when the strike got underway, I believe in the men. They can come and see me anytime. Well, you visualize a sanitation worker walking into the mayor's office to have a conversation about him, about his conditions of employment. It's silly. So they knew that unless they organized something that had the financial underpinning to speak for them, they were destined for a hard time. But they said, this is the time that we're going to do it. And I never regretted it. I can't help but wonder sometimes whether at least decisions that I helped them make or recommendations that I made to them could have been different. But Dr. King was committed to this work long before he came to Memphis. And the irony being that Memphis and the strike was in progress when Dr. King discovered what was taking place here. He was in Marks, Mississippi, I think, doing a rally on behalf of working poor there, and discovered Memphis. And his identification with it was important to the rest of the movement. But the two forces that he knew were strong came together in Memphis.
I'm gonna come back to him coming here, your conversations, your experiences, and certainly his assassination. But why, what was it? Why have you committed your life to the unions and to trade unionists and to the working man and woman?
Well, in simple terms, Roland, I come to the conclusion there are two kinds of folks in our society. There's the powerful and there's the powerless. And you can generally tell which group you're in. When you analyze it, powerful people have things done for them. Powerless people have things done to them. And what's the difference? The difference is they're not the institutions, the mechanisms, the leverage in our community and among our workers to signal to the power brokers that these are people who need respect and looking out for. Across the South, the burden of the power structure keeping these institutions out of the hands of people who need them. And you can see it wherever you go. I mean, you can spot a low-wage neighborhood when you drive through it.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason it's low wage is because they have no way of gaining better wages, better benefits, social power, political power. And those are the things I think a trade union brings to workers in any setting that they work in. If you look at our nation as a whole, or the world as a whole, those people who have access to political power, to social leverage, to better conditions, have trade unions. Roosevelt in 33, 34, whenever, he recognized the imbalance of power also and created the National Labor Relations Act, and people got the right to organize. But even in his wisdom, he left a lot of people out. And the fact that he left a lot of people out, we're paying for some of that today. Workers who have high skills, who have access to training and preparation, life may be difficult for them, but it's not impossible. For workers like sanitation workers who have no opportunity to organize, no opportunity to be represented, no opportunities or the skills to appear before a commission or a board and tell their story, they have nothing. And my commitment to trade unionism is because it doesn't do things for them, but it creates space where they can help themselves do things. And I think, for me, the satisfaction comes from helping workers like this use their latent power to change their conditions, or to help workers across South Africa recognize that you can alter history by coming together and applying basic principles that even powerful people use. That is, you can use your strength to alter your conditions.
Prior to him coming to Memphis, had you known Dr. King, talked to him, met with him?
I had met with him once, had talked with him once, and we were discussing the same thing we're discussing now. How do we change the condition of the working poor? You've got millions of people who work in hospitals. They get sick, they can't even get into bed that they make up. We had talked once about a program in Chicago where hundreds of thousands of hospital workers, primarily black and brown, worked in the hospitals, yet they had no way to alter their situation. And when I say alter their situation, is if you're earning average $1.35 an hour, I mean, you're not going to have a great life. You may survive. So what our discussion was is how do you merge, the civil rights movement and the trade union movement, and interject the religious community and talk about their moral responsibility to help these people move towards a better life. And in Chicago, Dr. King ultimately created an organization called HELP, Hospital Employees Labor Project. And it helped them change their circumstance. And we weren't reinventing the wheel. We were doing what workers years and years ago did, whether it's mine workers or machinists or what have you did, to alter that situation. Now, we were also not misled that the trade union movement is no utopia. It has its shortcomings like everything else, but if it gave us an opportunity to get engaged, to get involved, to move up through the ranks of organized labor to the positions of power, that you could think through how to and where to bring organizational strength to organized workers. That was it, simple. And I became wedded to that idea.
So I talked to Reverend Jim Lawson, and he said that the group decided we need to reach out to Dr. King and bring him in. He said he was tasked with making that call.
Right.
What was the reaction of these regular, ordinary men once y'all told them he's coming?
You couldn't believe it. I mean, there was such a not only love for, respect for, but appreciation of the fact that Dr. King would identify with their struggle. And whether or not he talked about their specific situation, but just his moral authority and moral leadership would deliver a message to those who they believed held the power over their lives. And that went beyond just Memphis. Dr. King brought press, no matter where he went, brought media, and the belief that if you can get the story of their strikers outside of Memphis, then perhaps other people would become sensitive to what they did. These were men who came up from the Delta, or from West Memphis, or from Arkansas, who had worked a lifetime without any respect whatsoever. Like I said, this was not an economic strike. They simply wanted to find a way to resolve problems they had every day. We had a situation, Roland, where if the weather went bad, black workers in these areas were sent home. Everybody else stayed at work. If the sun came out and it stopped raining, they got paid. These guys lost a day's pay. You lose a day's pay and you make $7.80. That's a major setback. Mm-hmm. And so the question is fairness. The question of the city being sensitive to the work that they did. And it wasn't just for them as black workers, this was for all workers. And if Dr. King could help them get that message out, if he could talk to a broader audience, they saw that as a plus.
What was it like? First of all, you clearly heard about him, heard about how he could sit in a room and listen to that side and listen to that side and listen to that side and then listen to that side, and then sum everybody's arguments up and then say, we're going here. What was it like to witness him in those meetings discussing tactics and what we should do next?
Well, the thing that Dr. King had was this incredible respect from everyone. There may be disagreements, but it was a respect of his beliefs in the right thing to do. And so even among those of us here who were trying to think on a day-to-day basis strategies, there were disagreements. But in the end, you'd say, well, Doc, what do you think? And whether it's coming from the SCLC staff or coming from the local leadership through the organization Community on the March for Equality, or coming from the union. These are three different entities with three different levels of interest. Mm-hmm. But there was a respect for his views that guided everybody into a course of action. I mean, there was some of us there were some folks who didn't believe in the march, or marches, but they all acquiesced to Dr. King's view that we not only got to march, it's got to be nonviolent, but it's got to be focused on the power center and power structure that had the ability to change this. We had a mayor who had just got elected with no obligation to the African-American community for anything, totally insensitive to the needs of the community, and absolutely outraged at the fact that a black workforce would raise the question with him of changing the process to accommodate to them and give them representation. That was different. That was different.
You had the march that he led. It ends in violence. I've read numerous books that said that he was shocked, he was despondent, he was depressed. That literally when they took him to the hotel, they put him under the covers in his clothes because he just could not believe what happened. And I talked to Janella Clayton and others, and they talked about just this tremendous strain and stress that was on him and his body in that last year. Did you see it? Did you feel it?
Yeah, I was in the meeting when he came from the march to the Rivermont Hotel, as I recall. And he was physically, shocked by what he had. But we didn't understand at that time what were the forces beyond our control. And there are the folks who would argue, well, there was a young people who disliked his style. That may be partially true, But what we had were provocateurs whose mission it was to not only diminish his image in the eyes of the nation, but to disrupt this march in a way where the strike itself would be damaged, the demonstration of his lack of control and influence, and challenging the level of influence that the local community had in terms of moving towards a solution.
And that's what happened, because all the press the next day, national media, oh my God, he's lost it. He can't control. He's no longer relevant or important.
Right. And you had members of Congress speaking in Congress at his absence of influence any longer in demonstration to affect public policy. And he was troubled by that. He was troubled by that. It was just a short while after that, maybe 6, 8 months after the strike ended, Senator Frank Church held a set of initially unrelated hearings. When we learned about some of the influences that were put to play in the strike right here in Memphis. And it's interesting reading. And the men were more determined than ever to continue their struggle. I believe that was on about the 28th of March. And what went unnoticed, young fellow, 16-year-old, killed by the Memphis police, unrelated to the strike, but included with the strike issues. These were really very difficult times. And the men began to understand that their struggle was a part of a much larger struggle.
I've heard the 43-minute and 16-second speech he gave April 3rd, Mason Temple. If I'm correct, he shouted you out in that speech. You were there.
Yes.
From your perspective, describe that night, that experience.
That was probably one of the worst nights. Weather-wise, emotions were high. Dr. King was tired, a little bit beaten up. And he really did not want to speak that night. Ralph Abernathy was the so-called principal speaker. And Ralph gave a tremendous presentation, but people wanted to hear Dr. King. And they charged somebody with going and getting Dr. King. I think he was trying to rest, but he got up and came over. And he gave what has come to be known as the mountaintop speech. And you could tell, at least you could assess that he was tired. But he saw the crowd that night. He saw the recognized need for him to say something to these people. He must have had 18,000, 20,000 people. The church was at Mason Temple. And he summoned up all of his preaching skills and his analytical skills to talk about the conditions that were in front of us. And, it was just an unbelievable night. And I personally, we will not forget it. It was one of the high points of listening to social and political rhetoric. It was just a tremendous presentation. And people went out of the church ready to march, on April 5th. And I think they probably would have marched through brick walls and anything else, but it was a motivating speech preparing them for the march that was going to take place.
Were you surprised at how focused he was on economics in that speech? Because he talked about boycotts. He talked about redistributing the pain. He talked about how SCLC put money in a black bank. He talked about, again, what frustrates me is most people have heard the last 3 minutes of that speech. But to hear the totality of this 43-minute speech, where he has a laser-like focus on economics as the future pathway for African Americans.
No question about it. What he had concluded, that there's a power system that perpetuates itself and keeps people in these conditions. And he talked about, as you said, all of the ways in which you force that system to become engaged in relieving the problems and pressures on the working poor. And as you say, he's talked about the boycotts and the movement of money and the deposits of money and all of the ways in which you can put pressure on the system to force it to become engaged in relieving the problems. It was one of the, I think, more dramatic speeches I've ever heard. It also had a sense of, well, at least Dr. King gave the impression that he was weary. He talked about his almost, death in New York from this lady who was stabbed. And he talked about a lot of those kinds of things. And then as he began to wrap the speech up, and I think he was talking to the people who had urged him to come over, and he was maybe reluctant at first when he talked about the man who was injured along Jericho Road, and the fact that other people stopped by and asked the question, should I stop? Should I keep going? And he said for him, the question was, what will happen to them if I do not stop? And it pulled all of these things together and reminded some of us of why this struggle was taking place. Because this was not a normal kind of strike that trade unions or community movements identified with. And we certainly thought clearly that we're here until the end. I mean, you cannot walk away from this. You can't sidestep it. And he made all of that clear in his speech. And I for one, think that Dr. King had finally I shouldn't say finally, but had identified some of the root problems and root causes of problems that perpetuated the poor, where you had a situation where incredible wealth and incredible poverty lived side by side with no embarrassment from the rich. And he saw the working poor as the future work because it involved the economic struggle that he had begun to think seriously about.
April 4th. What were you doing that day? What was the day like?
Oh, yeah. Every day was a day of mobilization. We would meet with the men to the degree if there was any progress. We'd report on what that was. If there were any unusual things happening, fill them in on that. If there are any questions they had or decisions they need to make, to try and get that done. But everybody was mobilizing for the march.
But you also had a court hearing that day, if I'm correct.
Yeah, that was a series of injunctions. But SCLC took responsibility for dealing with the injunctions. Andrew Young and James Orange and some of the other fellows and their lawyers took responsibility for the court because the court had enjoined the march. It had not enjoined the mobilization and community action work that we were doing.
So that day goes along. You go throughout the day, you get to the evening. Where are you?
I'm at the headquarters building of what was called then the minimum salary building of the AME Church, which is a building next door to where our mobilizing headquarters were, which was Cleveland Temple. In the evening, I lose track of the time, but the word came over the radio that Dr. King had been shot on the balcony at the Lorraine Motel. And among all the unbelievable things that you just refuse to accept, this was one of them. So
you hear this on the radio?
So a co-staffer and myself, we were like 5 minutes from the Lorraine Motel. We jump in the car and we come around here. By the time we get here, police were already here, keeping people out. As opposed to keeping people in. And this whole evening was just one that we had difficulty believing. Dr. King, as prominent a leader as he was, to be shot on the balcony made no sense to us at all. It was not like he was a stranger in town. He should have, and perhaps did have as much security as you could have. But the evening ended with not only with the shooting, but with him being taken to the hospital. Our responsibility then was to make sure that nobody else was injured. I mean, the city obviously was just outraged, and our job was to make sure that the people, got home all right, didn't confront the police or anybody else with any activities that would cause there to be more harm. And then to reconvene a meeting of all the partners in this thing to talk about where do we go from here.
You get word that he's died. Where are you and how do you react?
Well, personally, it was an incredible level of sadness. It was not like you had a leader who preached violence. You had probably one of the most committed men to nonviolence, yet to be killed through a violent act. We were a little, we had to think through what this all meant. How and what do we do with the men the next day? How do we handle the notification across the country as to what was taking place in Memphis, and at least whatever advice we were going to give to other folks, how they should react. And clearly, the country was beginning to go up in smoke. The anger that was across their major urban areas was just incredible.
I interviewed Reverend Jim Lawson, and he said the next day he went to work. He said, we literally did not have time to stop. And he said it wasn't until either July or August that the grief hit him. He said, but literally, he was completely in work mode.
Well, I think that's typical of everybody, and certainly Jim, who was such a major part of this. We had 1,300 men, 1,300 families. Who knows how many children that were a part of all this. We had a community by now that was totally mobilized in support of them. There needed to be direction given. There needed to be a conversation with the leaders. There needed to be addressing the young people, many of whom had become reluctant supporters of the strike, but they were supporters. We had to at least make sure that no one gave a reason for added violence against any community members. And to try as best as we could to prepare for what ultimately became a major march on behalf of Dr. King himself. And we were getting deluged with calls from all over the country of people who really want to know, is it real, is it true, is it, et cetera. I distinctly remember a call from Bayard Rustin, who was on a radio show in Westchester County someplace, where people were equally upset. And I think Bayard mentioned on the radio, if you want to do something to help people in Memphis, send $1. And the outpouring of concern and support, in a day or so, we felt down here where there was duffel bags, army duffel bags filled with dollar bills that people were so impacted by this. But as Jim said, we didn't have time to stop. We almost went from his death mode to mobilizing for this major march that we got committed to. And I believe we had 40 or 45,000 people show up for that march. We had to deal with what was going to take place in Atlanta. And to their credit, the men, while they regretted and was suddenly upset by Dr. King's assassination, they remained committed to their goal. And they organized themselves. They made their own decisions about how they would respond on a city basis. I can remember we were real concerned about whether or not we wanted to take the marches back downtown. minister here in town whose name may be lost in all the history, Reverend Henry Starks, who took just personal responsibility for organizing and mobilizing the march to dramatize to the business community and certainly to the city leadership that these men were committed to this. And I think we wanted to take a day off, but the men asked us, aren't we going back downtown? Aren't we going to march today? And for those of us who were staff, you know, we had to really not only pick ourselves up, but to try and understand that, you know, this was a tragedy that happened in the course of a major movement, and understand that Dr. King was certainly aware of the risk, but he is also committed to the movement.
Just a couple more questions. We were out there today, the wreath laying ceremony, and you heard these men say that here they are 50 years later, still fighting for rights and respect. So many people, I think, go, well, March was successful, they got what they wanted, but the fact that they still have not been made whole.
Right.
That has to be angering to you.
It is.
Especially in a city that for the longest was black run. Black mayor, black city council.
You're absolutely right, Roland. The fact that there is not a pro-worker environment, there's not a belief that workers have a right to participate in those decisions that affect their work life, which would give them the right to sit across the table and negotiate safety procedures, promotional opportunities, grievance procedures, retirement, vacation, sick leave. While these workers have much of that, they don't have the clear-cut right to do that. And even if they achieve it, one stroke of the pen can take it away or threaten its existence. We've got a responsibility, we in this context, I mean the union and trade union leadership, to develop leaders and procedures that carry on across the years. Generations. What these men did, and I really appreciate the action that President Obama took. He put them as a group into the Labor Hall of Fame because while many of them would never realize the benefits from the struggle, it laid the foundation for those who come after them to benefit. The proudest, well, I shouldn't assess for them, but I've been told by one of them the proudest moment they had was to have been told by President Obama that what they did was a part of the foundation for his being the President of the United States. And whether it's Memphis or Toledo or wherever, where men are denied the right to struggle for a better life, what you've got is a boiling pot ready to boil over. I mean, anyone should be entitled to the opportunity to speak for themselves or have someone speak for them. I look across the room, I see a picture of the mayor of the time, as a city at that time, a fellow by the name of Henry Loeb, who just had no idea what the city was moving towards. And I would say the strike and the conditions to resolve the strike were met twice before the assassination, based on what the men were asking for and what the city, through the city attorney, was prepared to accept were met a half hour after we met in the mayor's office. The mayor assigned his city attorney and his deputy city attorney to get with us and just sit down and put something on paper. We put it on paper, it met our needs, met their needs, they gave it to the mayor and he went berserk. I won't sit with these people and discuss their situation. I am the mayor of Memphis, Tennessee. I'm prepared to take the shirt off my back and give to them. They never understood that what they'd like to do is buy their own shirt. So we settled a strike twice. And the tragic loss, in spite of the fact that conditions were met, is what troubles you more than anything. And young people who are now a part of the process should know the history of what these men did to change the situation here in Memphis, not just in the workforce, but to educate them around their responsibility to continue, not just to struggle on behalf of themselves, but for their community. And Memphis ought to be a better place.
Last question. Next to last question. We're in a period where labor participation is at its lowest. For African Americans, there's tremendous benefit to being in unions. Yet, for the last 30 or 40 years, Republicans or conservatives have been very successful at basically turning the word union into a vulgar name. Mm. How do you feel when even you hear younger folks when they hear union? Ooh, I don't want to hear that. Horrible idea. Unions are terrible. Unions are bad. They're obscene. Last thing I want is somebody controlling my money.
Mm-hmm. I think one of the areas where organized labor has not done a good job is to talking about the role of organized labor in a democratic society. Many workers come into the workplace and the conditions that exist right now, benefits and et cetera, folks assume the employer gave them that out of their kindness they decided that they needed 3 weeks vacation or what have you, without knowing how you got to that point. So we have an obligation to talk to people, not describing the employer on a constant basis as an adversary, but talking about them and our role in a contested environment where the union is fighting for the needs of not just those people who are members, but for society as a whole. And that the union's role in that is to be doing the ongoing work and thinking through the needs of workers and families, to thinking about the programs and policies that make for a better, more fair, more equitable society. And if the argument is all about whether or not you're going to get a nickel more an hour, we're never going to win that argument. Now, in the context of what we should do with regards to building power with employers, historically, we've been in a situation where we're organizing one member at a time. And the opposition has been able to define us as counterproductive, as opposition, as obstinate. And we have not defined ourselves as well as we should. Mm-hmm. It was really not the employer who gave us retirement pay. It was not the employer who gave us sick leave. And we have to develop our own narrative for making people understand how this came about. I think in terms of organizing, we've got to approach organizational work differently, I think, than we have in the past. We have to organize to build power, not organize for one more member. We talked earlier about, Lech Walesa and the Polish workers. Mm-hmm. They were organizing around issues of political freedom and social justice. That's where I think our struggles are. I mean, the new workforce of the future are young people, they're immigrants, they're women, they're African Americans. These are the people who want to be organized to share in the benefits. We're not interested in bankrupting the corporations or those who bring the jobs. We simply want a voice in how to make those jobs better.
30, 40, 50 years from now, a kid's going to walk through here. They're going to see these photos. They might be in Detroit or in D.C. They might be reading a book. They might be watching a documentary. And they're going to see the name or they're going to see the face, Bill Lucy. What do you want them to know about you?
Well, I think if anything, the lucky break that a Bill Lucy got was to be able to develop some understanding, some skills, a little bit of commitment that was valuable in helping others sort of find a way to join a struggle for a better life. To say to people, if you work together collectively, we can find ways and means of developing and focusing on the program that makes people's life just a little bit better. I think you're going to always have the inequities in wealth and income. The question is, can we bring enough folks together who have the kind of influence socially and politically to develop the programs that just make life a little bit better? There's an old saying by an old trade union is, what is it that labor wants? You know, a little bit of leisure, a little bit of recreation, some health care, a little bit of education, something to make us better people in the society we got to live in. And if they come to that conclusion, I'll consider my contribution to have been meaningful.